East Palestine in New York, talking to all the press. I'm gonna mute my mic. Let me send out all the invites to get everyone here. Yo,
Another one.
can you hear me?
Sorry. Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I got the invite. Yep.
Good, good. Just was wondering because I was alone on stage and there's people in the audience and I can't ask them if they can hear me or not. So I was like,
Oh, right.
I'm talking,
Yeah.
but I don't know if they can hear me. I'm like, should I talk? Should I wait? But
You can do a thumbs up. You can get them all to send you
yeah,
hearts.
yeah, but like I'm not as intelligent as I may look. Let me get the crew
Who
in.
said you look intelligent? Just kidding.
Right, let me get the guys together.
Yep.
It's been a while. We haven't done Twitter files drop, so I forgot. I forgot even to invite. Let me get the regulars in.
Yeah.
I'll send out an invite now to Matt, but it'll be good to read it first.
Sure.
I was beginning to wonder when we were going to have a Twitter files thing come in again.
Let's get Prodigal in, eh? You want Prodigal? Let's get Prodigal. I like him.
Absolutely, man. It's been a while.
Awesome.
Is he in
I
the
just invited him
is
up.
he requested? Hey.
Yeah. He's requested. Yep, he's up.
Prodigal, I miss you. Brian misses you as well.
It's good to be back.
Hell yeah.
Was there actually a drop today or no?
Yeah, it just came out now.
It literally just came out. Yeah.
We're not.
I'm going to retweet you.
Are you implying that we're clickbaiting Prodigal? Is that what you're trying to say?
Listen, to each their own. If it gets people in, I don't care. Listen, as long as there's more people listening to what certain people have to say, I'm all for it.
Oh, and guys, leave some replies in the comments in the bottom right if you have any questions. We'll read them out.
Was it Matt Taibbi's drop or somebody else?
Yeah, it's Matt Taibbi today. Yeah, and I only just removed him from my alerts list, so I didn't even get it. Normally I'm
why
like.
Did you remove him? Did you give up on the?
I was just purging people. Because he was just tweeting random stuff. So I was like, I didn't realize he was going to do more drops. I'm going to add him back to the thing.
And it's not even the Fauci files, which is interesting.
No. Yeah, that's still coming, right? To my understanding, it's still in the works. They have to fly some journalists down there to the Twitter HQ and deal with it.
Do you mind sending out?
Because it's not going to be Taibbi.
Do you mind sending out an invite to Name Redacted? I can't remember his handle.
Yeah.
It's name redacted 247.
Oh, 247. I thought it was 17.
Got it? Okay.
Yeah, I'll do it.
Yeah.
Jim.
You want to make Jim the co-host?
Yeah. And he can help me invite a few people. Just give me a sec.
That'd be excellent.
Where's Jim? Co-host invite. Jim, you got a co-host invite.
Excuse me.
If you could invite Name Redacted Jim, that would be great.
Let me know when to start. We're at almost 2,000 people.
Already almost how many?
Almost 2,000.
2,000. Jesus. That was quick.
Yeah. Yep.
I think everyone misses the juicy Twitter files.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Alright, everyone.
There's only 17 drops.
Yeah, it should be,
you ready?
Should be a quick one.
Yeah.
Alright, let's pin it above and let's kick it off. Do you want to pin it above first?
Right. Can do, yeah. And I think Matt is tweeting some extra stuff, so I'll go over that afterwards. Alright, so here we go. Twitter files. I'll start now. Twitter files number 16. Comic interlude, a media experiment. Number 2. The Twitter files have revealed a lot. Thousands of moderation requests from every corner of government, feds mistaking both conservatives and leftists for fictional Russians, even Twitter deciding on paper to cede moderation authority to the U.S. intelligence community. And he posts 4 screenshots here. One's an internal guidance, I believe, from Twitter. It reads, Any user identified by the U.S. intelligence community as a state-sponsored entity conducting cyber operations against targets associated with the U.S. or other elections, or an entity associated with such operations, shall not be allowed to advertise on Twitter. This is from a previous drop, right? An email from Yoel Roth, directed to Emily Horn, Nick Pickles, and IQ Escalations, reads, "Hey Emily, unlike hashtag released a memo, this one is primarily being driven by data from Hamilton 68. I'll do another sweep for spam shortly, but as of yesterday, this looked like the right-leaning hashtag about the shutdown, which only got the label of Russian because the Hamilton dashboard falsely accuses a bunch of legitimate right-leaning accounts of being Russian bots. How we publicly push back on Hamilton is a bigger question, but I don't think there's anything too noteworthy about this hashtag beyond that. Yoel." That's the second email. Third email is, "Hey folks, I suspended 12 accounts of AR origin and 10 accounts of VE origin that were tweeting about Ukraine and Nazis and were clustered by identical event IPs and user agents and or safety graph. After reviewing the Chelikos account, we're recommending to request an ID in order to obtain another signal about the actor behind the account. While the FBI asserts that the account is a proxy of Russian actors, we found evidence that suggests it's linked to individuals in the Pirate Party in Catalonia and others of the left political spectrum. So it's not even Russian bots, it's actually members of the Pirate Party. It's a legitimate political party in Catalonia, an independence movement, I'm just saying. We also found that the Chelikos account has been, strangely, retweeting its own content and quickly deleting it, racking up more than 3,000 deleted tweets since last week alone. So, the U.S. government tagged it as a Russian disinformation, but really it was from a left-wing Catalonian or Spanish account, not even Russian-related. Yeah. And then there's another email, says, "Greatly appreciate your assistance. Regards, Khadija," from the Foreign Influence Task Force, that's FBI, and also another one from Elvis Chan, says, "Twitter folks, could you see below from the FITF Global Unit and let us know what you think? Thanks." And another one, it's from, who's this from? Davis K at CTD FBI, or it's an FBI person saying, "Elvis, the Daily Beast article and the associated names." And it's a link to some article where it says right-wing media outlets duped by Middle Eastern propaganda campaign, and the names are all associated with, they're like fake names. Yeah, I remember this article that came out. Basically, they tried to claim that the Middle Eastern propagandists or something were using Twitter to promote. And all they did was link to a Daily Beast article that supposedly uncovered it. So that's the FBI source, guys, the Daily Beast. Yeah. Number 3. These and at least a dozen other newsworthy revelations produced exactly zilch in mainstream news coverage in the last 2 months. And he refers to then House hearings were held last week at which one witness told a story about Donald Trump asking to remove a mean tweet by Chrissy Teigen. The press went bananas. Now that was big news. And so apparently Trump tried to get Chrissy Teigen's tweet deleted from Twitter, and that became a big major news story. And the TMZ article reads, "Chrissy Teigen, my pussy-ass Trump diss made it to Congress. It feels amazing." So I guess she called him a pussy-ass, and he wanted that removed. And that became a news headline in the New York Magazine, TMZ, MSNBC, The Hill, NBC, BuzzFeed, Now This, and so on and so forth. So they were more than happy to write this nonsense up, but, U.S. senators and the government asking Twitter to ban Americans or anybody really for criticizing them, that's not a big deal, who cares, right? So number 5. Purely to show the bankruptcy of media in this area, let's introduce a pair of loud new data points and see if any press figures at all cover either of them. So he's doing an experiment here. This is a social experiment that he's running right now. And he says, if a president freaking out about one tweeter was news, surely a U.S. senator thinking on 300 plus of his own constituents must also be. And this is from Kevin Kane, who is a person at Twitter, forwarded this to Site Integrity, to Yoel Roth and Enrique Flamini. And the title of the email is Suspicious Accounts from Senator Angus King. So he says here, I spoke with the campaign director for Senator Angus King this morning, who provided a very large list attached of 354 suspicious accounts they have identified. And the list is called Sus FB accounts. Number 7. Here's Maine Senator Angus King writing to Twitter to call a slew of accounts suspicious for reasons like Rand Paul visit excitement. Wow. Bot. Averages 20 tweets a day. So if you tweet it more than 20 times a day, you're a bot, apparently, according to Angus King. Being followed by his rival, Eric Brakey. So if you followed his rival, Eric Brakey, you were a bot, a Russian bot, according to him. Or my personal favorite, mentions immigration. So if you mentioned immigration, Angus King would call you a Russian bot, and he'd want you banned from Twitter. Absurd. And so, number 8, King's office declined to comment. If Dick Nixon sniffed glue, this is what his enemies list might have looked like. And he actually links to this. I'm going to put this in the top here so you can actually see the accounts that he tried to get banned from Twitter for simply, following his rival or mentioning immigration or criticizing him, right? Number 9. So as not to focus only on Democrats or only those who caucus of Democrats, here's a contribution from Republican Mark Lindsay, a State Department official most famous for offering to donate his brain to science after a claimed brush with Havana syndrome. Now, if you're not familiar with Havana syndrome, it was a made-up disease that a bunch of intelligence community people claim to have suffered from because they had headaches and they're able to get disability after claiming that, right? It was later proven to be nonsense. That they were claiming that the Russians in Cuba were targeting lasers at their brains and giving them headaches. Turns out it was all in their head. Right? There was an investigation into it. And this is the article. U.S. diplomat Mark Lindsay, who suffered mysterious injury while stationed in China, pledges to donate brain to science. Yeah. What a weirdo. Number 10. Lindsay wrote to Twitter bluntly asking to remove 14 accounts, distinguished among other things by skepticism of Russiagate. Quote, the below are some Russian-controlled accounts that I think you want to look into and delete. So this is Mark Lindsay sending an email to Twitter directly, right? This is directly from his email, lindsaymr@state.gov, where he writes to Lisa Roman at Twitter, and he writes, Hi, Lisa. Nice to be in touch with you. I'm an American Foreign Service officer that works at the State Department, and I've been working on Russia issues for more than 2 decades. I speak Russian and know the country and its disinformation efforts really well. Significantly and somewhat rare at the State Department, I am a lifelong Republican that has worked for the RNC, so in my work I've been able to identify a lot of Russian-controlled Twitter accounts that have made it through some of your previous purges. A significant number of Russian government-controlled fake accounts try to pose as Republicans, but when I get them in, I see obvious mistakes, including grammar, that don't make any sense if you were really a Republican. This guy sounds nuts, man. He says, also, I don't know any Republicans I've worked with on campaigns here in the U.S. that are obsessed with Ukraine, and many of the accounts that are followers of the below are posting obscure court rulings about Ukraine, postings about Ukrainian politicians and real Republicans couldn't even care less about, etc. I also noticed a distinct increases in their tweeting around the Iowa caucuses and the New Hampshire primary. The below are some Russian government-controlled accounts that I think you will want to look into and delete. Many of the followers of these accounts are Russian-controlled disinformation accounts as well, and I can provide many more Russian-controlled Twitter accounts to you in the coming weeks. Because of the sensitive nature of my work, I would ask that you, in your discussions with others, that you do not mention my name, or if you forward the below, that you take out my name. I would be happy to discuss with you in more detail on the phone if you would like, and I could set up a call to speak this week if that's what you want.
Yeah, why would you want to confront your confuser? I mean, your accuser, right? I mean, that's
right.
Pretty smart.
Yeah, this is he says it's sensitive but unclassified. So it's funny, this guy, it's like you're trying to put sensitive documents or trying to classify his own stuff. I don't think you can do that. Not really. You have to go through a process. And this guy's literally just reaching out to Twitter to get them to ban a bunch of random accounts because he decided that they were Russian disinformation. And I can actually go over these accounts. He actually published a list here. It's
Can I ask a question really quick? Sorry, I don't want to cut you off, but I was just making sure that you guys invited Matt Taibbi to the space.
I did, yeah. He'll be coming in a bit.
Yeah.
Okay, just making sure.
Another invite won't hurt, though, Tara, if you want to send it.
That's true.
Charming point. So what
Yeah.
have we?
So
Which number are we up to, Ian?
we are at number 10.
Ah, cool.
Number 10. Yeah. Yeah. So we're halfway there. And I'll read the Twitter accounts that he wanted banned. One is, I'll just read their names. Bravo 2 X-Ray, Thunderstruck 1, as in Peter Strzok, Harry Go, Cute 24, Anon 7076 John, Roche Law 1, 3 numbers, Spicy Noodles _3, Silenced _Sanity, Mimi Middle Class, Russia Hack Site, Gucifer to Henry, Kenyans for Pete, and 15 pounds to go. So, I mean, these seems like a lot of meme accounts, really. Yeah, there's no evidence they're Russians. I don't even recognize any of these names. Like, I think I've seen one of them before. Might have been, what is it, the Meme Middle Class or something. It's just a meme account. So number 11, a government official writing from a State Department email asks to delete 14 accounts that are engaged in legitimate speech, and with no evidence is shown that they're Russian control or even bots. In fact, we at Racket, Racket's where Matt Taibbi works, I guess, know some of these people. So they actually are Americans, yeah. A clear First Amendment issue. I noticed that there were many crazy requests in Twitter records from officials wanting foes taken off of Twitter, with Californian Adam Schiff's effort to ban a reporter and stop any and all search results about a staffer making Angus King's spreadsheet gambit look a bit tame. And so this is Adam Schiff, and this is an email, I guess, from his office, I think, or either Twitter. So it says, hi, blank name. I met with blank name from PP and flagged the attached analysis in the House Permanent Select Intelligence Committee, Adam Schiff's office, for your review and feedback related to alleged harassment from QAnon conspiracists against a staffer, blank name. Would like to get your thoughts on our ability, if any, to support this request. Of note, from SP has reviewed this request and consulted with blank name from SI. Below is her initial feedback on the request. So this is the request where it reads, and this is from Adam Schiff's office. Remove any and all content about Mr. Misko and other committee staff from its service, including quotes, retweets, or reactions about that content. So, they wanted to literally ban anyone even reacting to this. And then Twitter responded saying, no, this is not feasible. We don't do this. Another request is suspend the many accounts, including at Greg Rubini and at Paul Sperry, who are journalists, right, which have repeatedly promoted false QAnon conspiracies and harassed blank name. And then Twitter said in response, we'll review these accounts again, but I believe blank name mentioned only one actually qualified for suspension. Another request reads, suppress any and all search results about blank name and other committee staff. Twitter responded saying, no, we don't do this. If it is related to QAnon, it should already be de-amplified. Another request, stop the spread of future misinformation on Twitter about blank name and other committee staff who are not public figures and who are not central actors in the impeachment inquiry or the 2020 presidential election. Twitter responded saying, no, we don't have a general misinformation policy. And final request was, label and reduce visibility of any content about blank name that Twitter does not remove for the reasons cited above. And Twitter replied saying, no, we don't do this. These are all internal responses from Yoel Roth, I believe. And he's basically saying, no, you can't do this. So number 13, the fact that mainstream outlets ignored the Schiff story but howled about Chrissy Teigen, shows what they're about. Responses like this are designed to keep blue-leading audiences especially focused on moronic partisan spats, obscuring bigger picture narratives. Number 14, the real story emerging in the Twitter files is about a ballooning federal censorship bureaucracy that's not aimed at either the left or the right per se, but as a whole, at a population as a whole of outsiders who are being systematically defined as threats. Beginning in March, we'll start using the Twitter files in March, so this is what's happening in the future. He says here, beginning in March, we'll start using the Twitter files to tell this larger story about how Americans turned their counterterrorism machinery against themselves to disastrous effect through little-known federal agencies like the Global Engagement Center, the GEC. I think Name Redacted has some details on those guys. So number 16, until then, if you found yourself on King's list, please send a DM or write to racket.news. I'm on vacation next week, but we'll mock up an Angus King told Twitter I was suspicious, and all I got was this lousy t-shirt, shirts when I get back. So they're going to actually send out t-shirts to anyone who was on his list. That's pretty funny. Number 17, thanks to Twitter Files contributors like Michael Schellenberger and Li Fang, and also thanks to Racket researchers. Searches were performed by a third party and any material may have been left out. So that's done with this Twitter files. Let me see if he's got any updates here. Yeah, he's got a tiny update saying that mentions immigration may be the funniest explanation I've seen a politician give for why a Twitter account is suspicious. And one of the funniest things about Senator Angus King's suspicious accounts list is why they seem to think that Zero Hedge is a bot. So they thought Zero Hedge was a bot. Yep. So yeah, that's done with this Twitter files drop.
Just going through the first couple as well. So for anyone that joined late, including myself, because I was inviting speakers, what's the summary? How would you summarize? By the way, I see Kim on stage as well. Kim, good to have you. Been a while. We're back to the good old.
By the way, Mari, your audio is very low.
Thank you.
Oh, really? Is it better now?
A little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, it's better. A little closer.
Oh, weird. Okay, usually
Uh-huh.
it's too loud. This is the first time.
Oh, it's much better now.
Oh, there you
good.
go.
Much
That's
better now.
Yeah. So for
Perfect.
anyone that came in late, what would you summarize? How would you summarize the Twitter files? What did we see here? Because I got bits and pieces of it as I was inviting other speakers,
Right.
and I know other audience members came in late.
Okay, so 2 points. One, Angus King and the State Department guy, sent a bunch of lists to Twitter to get them to ban accounts. And they claimed, falsely, that these are all Russian disinformation, Russian bot accounts, when really it was their own constituents, it was people who were criticizing them, people who followed their rivals. They gave no justification whatsoever to ban any of these accounts. I don't think Twitter acted on it, but it shows that politicians were using Twitter to try to suppress any sort of criticism of themselves. And the media did not cover it.
Okay, so Angus King, that's the senator, was personally sending requests to Twitter to remove information, correct?
Correct, yeah. 354 accounts to be exact.
Okay, did he give...
people who followed his rival or anything.
People that were following his rival?
Yeah. That's literally the justification. Yeah, that's how they determine that a person's a Russian bot. You followed my rival, you must be a Russian bot. Yeah.
Okay, did he give a proper explanation on why? What was his excuse? Okay, so we're implying that it was...
Tiny explanations. Yeah. So you mentioned immigration once. That means you're a Russian bot. You tweet more than 20 times a day. You're a Russian bot. You followed a rival. You're a Russian bot. You support someone, like Rand Paul, for instance. I don't think Rand Paul and Angus King are friends. You retweet Rand Paul. Oh, you're a Russian bot.
And this is starting to demonstrate, we've talked about this before, where do you draw the line? Like if you start censoring things that may make sense for some, but this keeps getting out of control and now someone's abusing the ability to censor. And do we see Twitter's response to these requests?
Not to all of them, just the ones to Adam Schiff. And the ones to Adam Schiff, which again were pretty much in the same line as Angus King's, if not worse, Twitter said, no, we will not do this.
Okay, so they rejected those requests to censor.
That's right,
Okay,
yeah. That's my assumption for the Angus King ones, because I think that these accounts are active now. So, I mean, even if they did get censored, then, obviously Elon Musk brought them back. So.
Okay, so we have one of the key points is Angus King requesting censorship of political rivals or of followers of political rivals.
Followers of political rivals, yeah, followers of political rivals, as well as a State Department guy who was also doing the same thing. He was just quote unquote, identifying Russian bots without any justification whatsoever that they were Russian bots. That guy did not provide any explanations. He just said, "Oh, I've worked in, the State Department for 20 years and I know how to detect Russians. And these guys, they're all Republicans. They claim to be Republicans, but I don't believe that they are because they're talking about Ukraine and no Republican is interested in Ukraine. So they must be Russian bots." That was his justification.
Okay, so we got someone from the Defense Department, correct?
No, State Department.
And they've requested the removal of accounts, right-leaning accounts, on the pretext that these
right-leaning accounts that were talking about Ukraine.
And were they?
If they're talking about Ukraine, you want
were they
them
influential
removed.
accounts?
No, they're not. They're just people talking about Ukraine.
And how many? What was the? Did I say how many they requested?
About 14 or so. About 14 of them. And according to Matt Taibbi, he actually knows some of these accounts. He actually knows them, and they're obviously not, Russian bots.
So if Matt Taibbi knows them, I'm assuming they would be influential, no? Otherwise, why would they remove those specific 14 accounts? What's the purpose? What's the agenda behind it, if there is one?
Because they were talking about Ukraine. So this guy wanted them removed.
They're censoring the narrative here.
Yeah. Basically, trying to, I don't know. Like if you talk about Ukraine, you must be a Russian bot, right?
I don't know, Mario, my read on this particular email from Mark Lindsay specifically is that he's a guy who's kind of, he feels like he can sense based on his experience and whatnot of what a Republican would talk about, that these accounts, based on what he's observing as a pattern, is they're, fake Republicans or fake accounts. And it seems to me like he's just coming out of bad bias, and he's in bad knowledge and not like a lack of expertise, and he's providing these names. I don't know that it's like this, I don't know if you can prove that it's because
Malicious,
he wants
yeah.
to get rid of a specific.
Yeah, but that's not even the State Department's function, right? I mean, the biggest thing from this drop is not only is the surveillance state through the DHS, involved, but you literally have the State Department, U.S. senators, congressmanship. I mean, this is a big issue. This is not in any of their duties or powers to be doing this to American citizenry or free speech. I mean, this is what the issue is. I mean, they give as much transparency as
No.
they want. If there's no accountability, then it's more of the same.
I think he just kind of decided, I'm going to do this on my own. I don't even think that it, at least the way that I'm reading it, it didn't feel that he's doing it in this like very official capacity, but he is doing it from obviously, a state government email. So, he shouldn't be doing it, but he is. But I don't think it's coming, I don't think he's operating in this very official capacity.
No, I wasn't just talking about that specific instance. I mean, they referenced the U.S. Senator. They referenced Schiff staff. I don't believe he was the only person from the State Department to apply pressure. I mean, this is, extra legal means to censor American free speech. I mean, either way, no matter how you sugarcoat it, this is not a good thing, especially if your tax dollars are being weaponized against you.
Well, and you've got Angus King going against his then opponent on the ballot. I mean, that's huge. That's really huge.
That's really big, yeah.
That one is like a new red line that's being crossed, in my opinion, because it's one thing about to censor a narrative, which again we all don't agree with it. But when you're starting to censor for personal gain, or what we saw earlier, what we're probably going to see with the Fauci files, financial gain. I think we saw that earlier in one of the file drops, where it was censorship for financial gain.
It's Pfizer, that was Pfizer.
Yeah, exactly. By the way, is my audio okay before we go to Pure?
Yeah, it's fine. That's fine.
A little bit louder, so it's doing all right. But okay, am I the only one that missed on Twitter file drop 2 where they literally stated that they just ceded censorship authority, or I guess authority on moderation, to the U.S. intelligence community? Like that.
That's a big deal. Yeah,
that's pretty on the nose. The fact that that's actually stated. I'm just hoping I wasn't like going crazy and just seeing the detail.
Yeah, Malcolm, what you're seeing tonight is just a reiteration of, and they have various emails where they were saying, take the lead of whatever we get from the intelligence community. That they were doing that on a regular basis.
When somebody just said that they're censoring for personal gain, what is the personal gain aspect here?
Well, the one guy who was talking about the Havana syndrome, he's claimed injuries and ability to get disability, et cetera. So he asked to basically censor accounts that said it was fictional or made up, which is insane, right? I mean, just looking at recent history, eliminating concerns about the COVID vax. I mean, if the state can do this, they could have silenced concerns about depleted uranium shells. They could silence concerns regarding, any subject to control the narrative.
Even Ohio, right? Or the Ohio thing. I mean, like, what happens when you have people in the government, who decide, we can't talk about it is because, this makes this train company look bad and we have investments in it. I mean, this is for personal gain.
Well, by the way, take this back to the Bush administration. When the Bush administration, let's say we had social media heavy at the time in the lead up to the Iraq war, and you've got the Bush administration reaching out. I mean, let's just, if that had been the case then. And
which Bush, which Iraq war? Are you talking W or HW?
W.
Doesn't matter.
Let's say that the WMD questions were coming in there, and people had investigative reporters had found out that it was all a lie, which wasn't easy to disseminate them, but someone had tried, and then the Bush administration is shutting it down there. I mean, that's the kind of level of stuff that we're talking about here. And Angus King doing this against a political opponent on the ballot. I mean, this is just freaking crazy. That was just, and notice the nonchalant nature.
Jim, but it failed, no? It failed. So Twitter did not accept. They just tried and it failed. So it kind of shows the system, at least in this case, the system worked, no?
It's a limited peek in, Mario, right? They're basically issuing.
Is it a limited peek in? It's a full
they ban other things.
True.
They did. Let's just put it this way: 50% of the accounts that were reported got banned, 50% weren't, right? Because in some instances,
in which case,
in all of these altogether, let's just say altogether, right? Anything that was forwarded to them to Twitter by the State Department at the time or by the FBI, those accounts were banned. They've been unbanned since, but those accounts are banned, and some of them still are. Like there's a guy who is in my replies saying that my account is still banned. My account is still banned. Elon hasn't unbanned me yet. You know, he's one of the first names that showed up in one of the previous Twitter files. He was marked incorrectly as a bot, and he wasn't. So a lot of accounts were actually banned. They did act on this. The ones that we're seeing right now, they may not necessarily have done so, but in a lot of other previous instances, they have. So we can't just say, oh, Twitter didn't do it, because it did, right? It's just the ones that were marked by, say, Hamilton 68. Those were not banned, but others were.
Well, and by the way, one thing I want to point out here that's very interesting. Notice the nature of the email that Angus King sent. Like, he was on the Intelligence Committee in the Senate, by the way, and I think he still is. But they're just sitting here saying, hey, I've got these problems, and I want to shut it down. And that's why he showed the Adam Schiff thing there. I mean, think about this process that these guys are considering. They're talking to the intelligence community as well, and Congress, the ones that sit on the Intelligence Committee, and they're just nonchalantly saying, hey, we got this problem, go shut it down. They see that they are able at least to get something of an in with this. Once people in DC feel like they have this sort of power, then they're going to keep using it over and over again. Some people just to try to cover their backs, but others because they're really into the psyop of this.
Well, there are no rules that say There are no rules that say, hey, you can't do this, right? And I think there should be rules that say, this is the standard. If you make a request of Twitter or any other social media platform, these should be the rules and the guidelines. Otherwise, you cannot make the request. You should only be able to make these requests if if it meets these requirements, and you set them up, and there should be some process there.
Well, even then they were fudging the requirements, though, and that's the problem, is that they were using nebulous claims, which have been corroborated by media bros about Russian disinformation. So they'll fudge whatever they need to.
And no, Catherine's correct. Catherine's correct. There should be like 3 months of investigation before any request can be made. So if there's like a nuclear issue, it should go probably through at least 3 months of review before any request can be made. Guys, foolish.
So keep in mind, one thing I want to shed a little light on, having worked in D.C., it is really important, particularly in the administration, but definitely in the legislative branch too, that you not have people with power in Washington, D.C. seeking to specifically bypass clearly stated rights that are available to Americans in the Constitution. So this would be something, in the case of Angus King and others, that should be going in front of ethics committees in the House or the Senate, depending on if it's someone in the House or there, because they're literally utilizing their power and influence and knowledge to shut down speech that they might find problematic. This is a huge problem in Washington, D.C. We've got rules and laws and ethics. You go to the Hatch Act for political purposes, which, by the way, there would be a Hatch Act violation if you had someone in the administration for political purposes trying to do this. There are laws in the books that really are designed to restrict this sort of activity.
But the difference here, Jim, is that instead of saying, they're not saying that the speech isn't allowed, they're saying these are bots, fake accounts that are making this speech. So I think you have to have a burden of proof to show that these are indeed bots, which is why there should be a much, much more intense process. And like Fidgetal said, where they need to really, the burden of proof has to be much higher and within a legal framework, really, before they are able to go and approach social media. And it's the same thing for maybe maybe deplatforming, like if you want to deplatform, let's say, a terrorist group, or, I mean, there should be some cases where I think that should be reasonable to do. But again, that there should be a legal barrier so that you have a legal framework within which to do that. So you can't just say, well, that's a bot, right? Versus somebody's free speech. So I think one thing to have somebody exercise their free speech, say to support Russia or criticize Russia, whatever, versus, a orchestrated bot doing that, which I do think is a different situation.
Well, but even so, I totally get what you're saying, but listen, process and what they shouldn't even be considering anything like this. Like, even if they think it's a bot, how would they know from Congress? No member of Congress, unless they got something from someone in the administration that does research on this stuff, would know that something was a bot. And
they
that
got it from
administration
Hamilton
can, but legally you can.
They got it from Hamilton 68 and used that to justify banning a whole bunch of people, which is absolutely ridiculous.
Listen, but yes, you're right. Can they technically, legally? Yeah. How did they get the information? They got it from someone in the administration, and that person in the administration may or may not know. No, I would tell you that from an ethics perspective in the House of Representatives as well as in the Senate, just from my experience of things, and people get by with things. Don't get me wrong, but what I'm saying is this is a very clear ethics violation. If you're wanting to shut down any of these accounts, and we're finding out more and more that I don't know of one real accusation of a bot that there might be out there in the Twitter fires, but not one of them that we have found to be valid. They for the most part, they're not valid.
Quick comment. So someone mentioned. First, I've got a few more questions for Ian. I know Piotr's been waiting for a while, and I want to ask him for his thoughts. But before that, just someone mentioned about the First Amendment. If someone's referring to those accounts as Russian bots, by the way, Joa Santos, thanks for helping me out with this. So if someone mentioned if someone is a Russian bot, they're not protected by the First Amendment. So
but they're Americans, though. They're Americans. These accounts are Americans, so of course they're protected by the First Amendment. You can't just accuse someone of being a Russian bot. They're not bots.
This is a hypothetical that didn't exist. Why would you argue a hypothetical that did not exist?
Let's go to what Catherine said.
It seems ridiculous to say that. Well, if I accuse you of being a bot, therefore you lose your First Amendment rights.
That's
ridiculous.
Ian,
bots' lives matter, guys.
Bots lives matter. But
ChatGPT is sentient, guys.
But let's just to clarify, we're not talking about, but like when I'm saying that, I'm saying like you have to prove that it's really a bot. If it's a person, it's a person. That's a very different thing. So yes,
I agree with that. I think you have to prove that it's a bot, but the problem is they have no way of proving it's a bot. And the proof, the organization that they tried to get the organization that they tried to get to prove it, right, because they wanted some backup, right, was Hamilton 68, which is just intelligence community nonsense. They were not transparent about how they determined a person's a bot. They just, again, claim a person's a bot and later disproven that any of these people were bots at all.
Yeah, so let me lay something really clear here.
Do you mind if I ask Jim? Do you mind if I ask a quick question for Ian, and then I'll give you the mic, and then we'll go to Piotr. Just wanna make sure there's nothing else I'm missing, Jim, for an overview. Is that okay? It's gonna take a second. Ian,
go ahead.
My mic is okay.
Yeah, your mic is fine. Yeah, it's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, it's fine.
All right. So you told us. I'm just want to make sure I don't miss anything with this drop, and just it'll help the audience as well. So we saw the senator that requested followers of his rival to be blocked. Twitter seems to have refused that request, but it just shows an abuse of power to this example with the purpose of censoring. Then we saw someone from the State Department requesting quote unquote Russian bot accounts or accounts he thinks are Russian bots to be suspended because of the narrative that they had relating to the Ukraine war, which means that this is very
recent.
No, it wasn't
about the war. It wasn't about the war. This is not recent. This is from
prior to the war.
Prior to the war. This is a year or two prior to the war. Yeah.
This is the election, right? It's not the war. It's to do with the 2016 election.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's 2019 or 2020.
So these are, by the way, anyone requesting to speak, please DM me so we can, because we won't see all the requests. And for the audience, we're going to go through the questions now for whatever you have, any comments that you have. We're going to go through them in a couple of minutes. So other than those two things, I know it's a very short drop, Ian, so we won't take too long. Anything else that was mentioned that would be worth noting?
Well, hold on. I need to clarify something. We were having a discussion earlier about whether members of Congress can do this stuff. This is a really, really important thing, guys. I don't know how to emphasize it enough. There is no circumstance whereby a member of Congress knows anybody's a bot. The only way you could know it's a bot is if you were in Twitter and Twitter could show you specifically how this thing became a bot. And the point I want to make is it is very possibly illegal. It is absolutely unethical for any member of Congress to ask any entity, any private entity, to stop anybody's speech for any purpose. Like there's no.
Jim, how's it illegal?
Well, it's potentially illegal if there's a Hatch Act violation, which does apply to people in Congress. But it is unethical because it's also potentially illegal because people have an absolute First Amendment right. You cannot put prior restraint on First Amendment issues. The only time that anything like that can happen is if there's real criminal activity already found.
Jim, it's not prior. They're not deleting accounts. They're halting accounts that they believe might infringe or otherwise cause a threat. In fact, I would say the opposite. I would say that it might actually be a much more legitimate approach to have a cap on threats to national security.
No. Who decides those threats? Being against the Ukraine war is a threat to national security. Wanting to focus on our border is a threat of national security. You're looking at the actors who've played a role in 2 years in mass censorship and have been shown to have lied to you multiple times. And you're saying, well, yeah, I'm still going to trust them this time. If we make some new rules, they won't try to circumvent them or break them outright. Like, I don't think people here realize how corrupt these institutions have become, and they're in office to basically secure our rights. When you say that this shouldn't be done, the Bill of Rights limits the government very particularly in regards to this. And when you have members of Congress reaching out to corporations that they regulate and they can cripple through regulations or other type of regulatory framework, investigations, etc., this is a big, big issue. This is not something that's going towards, going the other way.
I want to ask one question, and now I'll go to Piotr because he's been waiting way too long. He's been very, very nice today, being so patient. But Piotr, I have a question for you before Piotr, because
you got to bring him up.
Sorry?
You got to bring him up.
He's literally right next to you. Piotr is right there. You don't have to worry about bringing him up.
Yeah, I know. Piotr is there. So Fidjero, the question to you and for the audience, I think people underestimate how dangerous censorship is. I'll tell you why. I've been going deep into AI, and I'm asking this question to Fidjero because he has as well. And Catherine is, well, she's there. Yeah, Catherine as well. And the technology is fucking insane. Like, if we cannot censor what an AI could do or say, then we're in deep trouble. We've got an entity, not a living being, but an entity that's smarter than us, more capable than us, that has no limitations. Then the question is, if we do censor, who decides what to censor? And that person that's deciding what to censor will have a crazy amount of power. Because, soon we'll be talking to AI, and there's predictions about us wanting to talk more to AI than to humans, because AI will customize their response to us, they'll listen to us more, it'll just be a better experience than talking to a human. Already in customer service, some people enjoy the experience with an AI than a human being. So if we enjoy listening to AI more, we enjoy interacting more with it, and that AI gets censored a certain way, that can have significant influence on the narrative, significantly more than we have today. So question, Fidjero, is: am I overdoing it by taking it this seriously? Isn't it getting more serious? And isn't the concern that Jim is echoing valid?
I would actually say quite the opposite, right? So there's an interesting kind of legal or logical approach to discussions, right? There's the slippery slope argument, and then there's the exact opposite of a slippery slope argument, right? So there's if we allow this, then it'll lead to this, this, and this. But then there's the exact opposite argument that says,
wait, so you don't believe in the slippery slope?
I'm in the middle of talking. Thank you.
Culturally, the slippery slope.
I'm in the middle of prodigal. I'm in the middle of talking. Thank you. What I'm trying to say is, I know, right? You give me one show and I fucking go off. No, it's really, I'm in New York and I'm trying to avoid loud noises in the background. What I'm trying to say is, we need to have We need to have step-by-step approaches to understanding what we're doing and why we're doing. So to blatantly and across the board say the government can never say anything to any private institution as to what information should or shouldn't be coming out is, in your own minds and your own knowledge, patently false. The question is, are they overreaching? Are they overreaching?
They are. They are.
Just let me finish.
Now, decades.
Prodigal.
Guys. Prodigal, we got to be strong guys here. All right, Fidget, I'll let you finish off, and Prodigal, I'll let you respond.
Thank you, Prodigal. I'll be kind and nice if you let me finish, and then I'll let you finish, and we'll be very nice. My point is this: should a government at any point actually govern information that is, and at the core, what we're saying is, should they be governing information that has no general public interest? Absolutely not. We're all in agreement, right? The question then becomes is, do we spin up, or in reverse, do we say that the government should never have any input in information? I think we'll both agree. Absolutely not. There are absolutely important times when, if it is a bot, right, we're agreeing, we don't know if it's a bot or not, but if it is a bot and it's providing false information, we should have implements to stop it, right? So all I want to do is step back and say, going to Mario's exact point is, we just started deepfakes. AI hasn't even hit quantum computing mechanics at this point. It's going to go berserk. So do we have to have deeper controls from a government perspective? I believe we do. I don't believe we are prepared to moderate ourselves, this panel specifically.
Yeah, but Fidgetal, listen, first of all, we got to lay some more groundwork here. One, there is no basis by which the government, any government entity in the United States, may place a prior restraint on free speech and anything in the First Amendment. Am I correct about that? You agree with me?
You do not have free speech in a private entity. So stretch it out,
hold on.
Jim.
I got it. But hey, Fidgetal, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about a senator, a United States senator.
Jim, I'll be fair. I'll be fair, and I'll answer your questions exactly what you're asking them. So let's start again. Okay. I apologize.
Okay.
Ask your question.
The government may not place a prior restraint on the free speech, anything in the First Amendment, correct?
Correct.
The government. Okay. Now, we also should agree that the yelling fire in a crowded movie theater is not the law based upon that was just an example that Oliver Wendell Holmes used in a case related to speech. Would you agree with that as well?
You would agree with me that it's not that cut and dry, correct?
I understand that, but I'm getting somewhere.
Thank you.
You understand it.
No problem.
Things.
For the most part, yes.
Okay. So here's the point. Now there's another issue, and it goes to the privacy of the platform. It is Twitter's job, not the federal government's. Would you agree to deal with bots on their platform? Yes or no? Are you there? You're muted. Or is it me? Does everyone hear me?
I can hear you.
He's muted.
I can hear you. He's muted.
Yeah. So okay.
Yeah,
So I'll
I couldn't hear.
The fact is,
I'll make the point, Jim. Yeah.
It's up to Twitter to manage the bot situation. It is not up to the federal government under any circumstances. And the only time that the federal government ever has a right even to stop a bot on Twitter Space is if they have a warrant for that purpose. Like, that's the whole point here. Twitter has a right to manage their platform under the laws of the United States government. No one in the federal government has any right whatsoever to stop any speech of any sort. By the way, I would maintain even bot speech, unless they absolutely know. And that means they can't do bot speech, because if they want to stop bot speech, just since we're on this line of argument, then they must do so with a warrant that they've gotten from a court of law. You cannot have a United States senator or anyone in the federal government or anyone in the state governments or local governments going to a platform and saying, you got to stop this person because we said so, unless they've got a warrant from a court. This is the problem and the clear line that we're not drawing in this circumstance. This is why, even though it's a small drop and it doesn't seem as big as the other ones, it's significant. This United States senator attempted to stop his political opponents and felt he had the ability to potentially do so, by the way, by sending a list of 354 people. So it might be hard to figure out
him
which
off,
one's
Jim.
more
He ran away. He ran away.
No, he dropped out. The connection cut out.
That's probably what happened. That's probably why he didn't respond to me.
I do just quickly. I do want to. Piotr, I want to go to Piotr, man. Ian, was there anything else? Because I asked a question earlier. Was there anything else that was mentioned beyond those two key points? Just to make sure that there's nothing else we're missing.
No, I think Jim summed it up perfectly.
I agree. All right, so just make sure there's nothing else missing in the drop. Jim, I'll let you finish it off, and then I'll let Piotr jump in.
Yeah, no, and I'm curious to hear what he has to say too. But yeah, so no, this is the point that we're going through here. So the United, in many, there is no authorization anywhere in the United States for censorship. Period.
Circumventing the law, right? That's the issue. Right? They're circumventing the law. I mean, normally when the police. Like when the police want to shut down an account, say the account of a mass shooter that's posting its manifesto before it goes on a shooting rampage, or even after it does so and it's trying to inspire other people, they have to go through the court, right? They go to a court, they get a subpoena, the subpoena gets sent to Twitter or Facebook or wherever, and those guys will deal with it and they'll pull it down usually, right? 100% of cases I've seen, that's what happens. That is the system working because that's the law. The police can't just send Twitter an email and say, hey, can you ban all these accounts because we suspect that they're maybe up to no good? No, they need a fucking subpoena to do it. And so when you have a senator or a State Department official circumventing all of these systems, all of these laws that are already in place to prevent that sort of government overreach, that's, in my opinion, that is illegal, right? At the very minimum, it is extremely unethical for them to do so.
No, but if you write some more rules, they're going to obey it. I mean, the people who house these institutions, I mean, they're not corrupt political actors. They're going to listen to some new laws.
Yeah, I'm not certain that and Ian, there may be something illegal with it, but there is certainly something unethical. And the thing is, if we do not hold these people accountable for their actions and what they are doing to restrain speech. Again, we can. If the government was not involved with any of this, it would still be bad, in my opinion. But the badness is such that we need to hold these private actors, Twitter, Facebook, and all them, accountable for what they're doing and make us think about it in the public. But when you've got government actors in here, we have gone way past the line. And if you want a state that allows its political leaders to influence others to stop speech, then you have a problem. If you have private actors,
it's a big problem. It's a massive problem when the people like Angus King, as you said, they're on the Intelligence Committee in the Senate, have the ability to basically fuck Twitter and to fuck any social media company. That's a big problem because they are leaning on these platforms, these private entities, to do what they want without explicitly saying so, right? But they can do that. They can literally take action and shut down these companies and using antitrust laws and things like that to basically pressure them into doing what they want. That's the issue, right?
Which companies, Ian? Which companies have they shut down?
No, I'm saying they have the ability to do so.
No. Which ones have they shut down?
Individuals.
Microsoft, like fucking 20 years ago?
No, they didn't shut Microsoft down. They stopped anti-monopoly points, and they're doing that right now. But again, I just like to parse out the lines, right?
I'm just saying that they have the ability to do so. That's the danger in it, because these companies realize that if they say no to a senator who has the ability to do that, to influence committee decisions, they're going to lean in the direction of that person, right? That's a problem. It's an abuse of power.
But what's a better infrastructure? What's a better infrastructure? Like where in any other country, we wouldn't even get this information because it wouldn't be documented. They would know that they can't.
That doesn't make it okay.
No. Just name a better infrastructure.
Oh no, we already have the infrastructure, Fidgetal. It's called a warrant. It's called habeas corpus. I mean, that is the infrastructure, and we need to be strict about requiring habeas corpus, requiring that any government official who feels that someone is doing something wrong. I mean, the FBI should be going to the DOJ. Okay, we did this investigation. We think these are bots. We think that they're doing nefarious things. They go to the DOJ. A DOJ lawyer runs to a court and says, here's what our investigation found out. We think that this is a problem. And then the court should only be able to say okay or no. And that's
here's the thing, Jim. Here's the thing. So I agree. I think there should be absolutely a standard of proof, and I think it should be done through the legal system. But we are living in this digital age where we have these social media platforms, we have bots, we have maybe foreign agents interfering genuinely, right? Who are paid and they orchestrate campaigns. I don't think that the government or senators and things like that should be able to just say, go to Twitter or other social media platforms and say, okay, do this based on no evidence or weak evidence. It should be done through the court system. But what I think is that we need to build new frameworks through which we do this rather than relying on old frameworks, because it's probably not realistic to do that through these old frameworks for social media companies, especially for something like, hundreds or thousands of bots, for example, right? To prove every single bot in the same way that you would do, for acquiring warrants or things like that. So you have to kind of get a tech committee. You have to build.
Nope.
Who's saying no?
No, I'm just saying no, because this is ridiculous. Because if you're going to compile a list, whether it's 5 people or 10,000 people, you have to prove each and every single one. You can't just put people on the list and say, "Hey, let's just ban all of them," because we don't have the time to do it.
Let me throw in here. So there's something more fundamental here, Ian. You're making 2 presumptions, Catherine. The first presumption is that the attempts, which we know has happened from foreign entities to put bots on social platforms to influence opinion, you're making the assumption that that's been effective. No one has proven that it's been effective. It has been proven that there are bot farms that try to do this stuff. No one has ever proved that it's actually effective. In fact, I would argue...
You're not legitimately saying that out loud.
I am legitimately saying that out loud because Russia.
So you haven't read the NYU study on the Russiagate hoax, Digital? I'm sure you've read.
Hold
that,
on. Let me make this point, Prodigal. Hold on, because I want to address this. I would argue that the FBI's effort to shut down the Hunter Biden laptop story is 10, 20, 30, maybe 100 times more effective than anything Russian bot farms have ever done. I'm not saying it has no influence, but I'm saying no one has proved that it has strong influence.
So let's shut down the entire story. Hunter Biden's a fucking degenerate. Joe Biden is a ploy and a con, as every politician is. Where does this story go next?
Well, have you looked at the polling post-election showing how people would have voted?
Prodigal.
I mean, why don't you connect the dots, Digital?
Prodigal, give me a minute. What the validity of the story and the validity of the information on the laptop in terms of what its real significance is irrelevant to the point I'm making. The point I'm making is this. Functionally, if we have 2 things here, we have Russian bots that get placed on social media platforms to put out certain kind of information, and then the U.S. government via the FBI going and convincing social media platforms to shut down the Hunter Biden laptop story, whatever the actual significance of it is. I'm telling you, to affect elections, the Hunter Biden laptops thing was far more effective than Russian bots. No one has proved Russian bots go there. That's the first presumption.
So Jim, can I interrupt for just 1 second? Yeah. Only because I've never heard this spoken on the stage. Have we talked about the complaint made against Donald Trump, Jeffrey Epstein, and a bunch of other people that was laid prior to the election that got destroyed? But you can still find it online. That is sickening to the umpteenth degree. Have you? And this is actually this is not supposed to be divisive. Jim, have you read that complaint that was filed in district court?
I haven't, and if it's significant, has been shut down.
Well, no, Jim, you haven't read it. Jim, you haven't read it.
I haven't read all the way through it. I've read stories on it. I have not read all the way through it. No.
You haven't read the complaint that was public. Ian, have you read the complaint?
In a complaint. I mean,
no. I just asked. I just asked if you've read it. I just asked if you've read it. That's it.
Yeah, no, I haven't read it.
What's the point of it? Are you trying to say that we would protect? Yeah,
what's
the point you're trying to make here?
The point is that we have a misinformation war across the bow on both sides. And if we can get to truth and honesty,
nobody is denying that. Nobody's denying that.
Okay.
I'm not pro-Trump. Like this line of attack doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, Fizzle, let me just say this. I think your point is incredibly useful. And the substance of these things, and whether it's coming from the left or the right. By the way, I'm convinced that most of what's happening to shut down speech on social media platforms is coming from the left and from left-influenced people in the government right now. That's the biggest part of it. But no, everyone has this motivation. This is called politics. I mean, as Ronald Reagan said, politics is the world's second oldest profession, and it has many of the characteristics of the oldest one. And that's quite true. So, and that's why I brought up the George Bush example earlier, by the way. But here's the point. So the first presumption is that Russian bots have an influence. And the second presumption that Catherine made is...
I actually haven't made the presumption that you're claiming right now, Jim, so I don't know what.
Let me finish my point. I'll tell you why, Catherine. The reason you're making that presumption is
I didn't make, but I just said I didn't make the presumption, so I'd rather if
Catherine,
you didn't
stop presuming. Jim, please go.
So no. But you did say that we got to deal with the bots. How are we going to deal with the bots? And what I'm saying is we don't need to deal with the bots. Because the second presumption that you're making is that people can't see through that. And I would say they can. Some people won't. Some people do poorly.
Also did not say any of these things, so I'd rather if you didn't make presumptions about my presumptions.
I don't see why bots are a problem besides, being menaces on the platform that they have to deal with themselves. I don't see why the federal government has to step in and decide, the bots are going to influence the elections. And oh my God, if we don't shut down all these people that we call bots, they might rig the elections. Oh no, and 2016
they're not worried about
bots have more impact than just elections, and there's
Can you prove that?
Implication.
Can you prove that they have any influence at all? Yeah, can you prove that they have any influence at all?
Can words have any influence at all? Can anybody's words have any influence?
Well, the Chinese pandemic fear porn bots were pretty effective in ginning up a lot of fear for COVID.
You just said Chinese fear porn bots.
Hold on. So, Ian, do you think that bots don't have much impact? Cannot have much impact?
I'm just saying that they don't have much impact. Whether they can or cannot in the future, that remains to be seen.
Well,
right?
and that's the thing.
Okay.
That's the thing, Ian. So first of all, with bots, and I'm talking about bots in general, I'm not using them in a specific way in terms of elections or anything really that specific. First of all, bots, they can be, whether they're sophisticated, right? Like in the future, they may be AI bots and they may be very sophisticated. Like Ian, you just said, we don't know in the future.
Yeah, that's a concern in the future. Yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So it might become a bigger concern in the future. So that's one thing. So it may be something we might need to worry about more in the future than we do now. And whether they affect us or not, I don't think we can prove or 100% disprove, but as the same way as words, do words influence people? Well, if they're used effectively, they can. And as somebody just said, Chinese fear porn bots or COVID fear porn bots, they affect some people that don't others.
People.
So
people.
But keep in mind, I would argue, we don't have a huge worry in the future for this. Because the other thing that influences people is the people they decide to allow to influence their friends and connections.
Jim, I want to go.
Yeah, sure. Jump in, Piotr.
Thanks. Okay, so there's a few observations here. One of them being that I'm actually going to agree with Prodigal, which is amazing. Been listening for a while, and I think there's a few interesting things here. So one, I agree with Catherine about words have impact. After the protests in China, the white paper protests, we saw this influx of Chinese pornography because they were trying to inundate the app of Twitter so much that it would overwhelm or basically drown out the videos that were being posted on the internet from around China, which is a very interesting lateral tactic. But this also, I want to use another international example here for this conversation, which is, I've lived in DC for a while, and the thing that I can tell you about DC is it's incredibly detached from the rest of America and how many people in here are feeling about it. Jim knows it, but that's because he's been there, although he's left. But I would say that, two things come to mind for me. One, the policy question and the ethics question, we've got an overextension of big tech, which doesn't seem to have any limits. I'm concerned by sort of big mergers, right? I think Microsoft and Activision at the moment, although that's slightly different. But then you've also got an overextension of government, and I use the EU as an example of this. So last year, around June, May, the European Union really published quite a big report that was basically trying to talk about it's up to big tech to patrol or monitor the information and things like that. But what I think is interesting is that, people don't want that overextension of government. So there's been a pushback against this, not just by the big tech, but by quite a few members of different societies in the European Union. So for the American side of this, the question is, how much do you want to go towards the EU, which is increasingly a bit like a nanny state in some things, but then does do a good job of protecting certain freedoms of speech in other ways. So it's a case of balance. And the last thing I wanted to point out before I pass back to you, Mario, is the role of these rather sort of secretive or rather shady unknown entities. So the GEC, I think its acronym is, right? I've never heard of that, and I've lived in DC for 4 years. And
what's the GEC for anyone?
The Global Engagement Center, right? So it's meant to track. Ian, can you do a better job of summarizing it? You read the Twitter files out.
Basically their job is to track disinformation and bots and whatever, right? And they were the ones who were essentially sending all these lists to Twitter and other social media platforms and coordinating the censorship of mostly Americans whom they claimed were bots. That's what the GEC is, and they got all their information from Hamilton 68, which, as we now know, is just BS.
Of course. I remember
it's quite an arbitrary, basically, targeting of people, but also sources of information. And I think there needs to be a better job of standardizing how you go about targeting potential troll farms. I mean, there's not anything you're going to be able to do to prevent trolls or bots from existing on these apps. It's more simply a case of how well you can sort of channel it and counteract it through better policy. But the balance for me comes with whose ultimate responsibility does it rest with the big tech, which means overextension in that way, or does it rest with the government? But then you want a smaller government. So which one? How do you balance that? You know what I mean?
And by the way, I would maintain the government has. And sorry, I dropped because of a technical issue. I didn't even hear you, Piotr. But the federal government has zero right to try to stop bots. That is entirely the purview of the private platform.
Wouldn't it depend on what those bots are doing?
Yeah, if they're breaking the law, they do. I mean, the only thing I'll say,
if they have a warrant.
Mario, the only thing I'll say that is telling, right, is that if this was effective and done for the public good, right, the FBI and the state agencies announce any success they've had against any foreign influence operation as soon as it occurs. They haven't even really issued a statement in regards to this suppression and this censorship, which leads me to believe it's been overwhelmingly focused on Americans and political opponents domestically, etc. They're not even responding to this. We know it happened. We know it's clear. They could easily go to the news and say, this percentage was legitimate. This addressed a Russian influence operation, Chinese, Israeli, whatever. They're not doing that. So to still think that these actors can be empowered just with new rules to act on your behalf, there needs to be repercussions. All this conversation is theoretical nonsense.
Prodigal. Is Fox News talking about? No.
I don't know. I don't really watch Fox News.
No, they're not. The point is that no news is talking about it, which is the bigger issue.
So
the government. That is 100% the issue, and I agree with Frigital. Yeah, I agree with Frigital that the news should be talking about this. It's not. And that's the whole point of Matt Taibbi's drop today, was that the media is not interested in covering any of this.
It's not even the drop is quite small. But
because they're implicated in it. They're just as willing actors.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's as bad that the media haven't covered it at all.
What's up?
The UK media has even picked up on the Twitter files.
So this is the first space that we've all agreed on. We've all agreed on that it's fucked from the top.
Yeah,
Mario, if I may.
We all agree with each other now.
Yeah, jump in, Alsos. Jump in. Are you going to be there?
Time for some kumbaya, guys.
Go ahead, Alsos. Alsos, you got to unmute, bro.
No, you unmuted. You muted everybody, Mario.
Oh shit! I forgot to unmute everyone. Sorry. Also, you got to unmute. This is let me show you censorship. This is censorship right now. This is me joking. Okay, I'm not gonna.
How dare you censor us?
So
Yeah, exactly. Right. No, so I think I do want to provide some historical context, right? So I think the GEC is modeled on what used to be called the State Department. I believe it's called the, and I pulled it up, the United States Information Agency, which was specifically designed to counter the Soviet Union and communist propaganda. The United States Information Agency basically models the GEC. The information agency was, again, against communism in the Soviet Union, trying to get U.S. information into, the behind the Iron Curtain. That got dissolved in 1999, and I think that was a problem. I think, the U.S. should continue to do against foreign and to protect us from foreign influence and target foreign audience. There should be, obviously, there's a wall and there should be a wall, right? But to Particle's point, there has been successful campaigns against foreign influence operations. Most of the times these are announced by private companies. I believe Microsoft, for example, announced one. Actually, I would think during the 2020 election against an Iranian bot, campaign, an Iranian information information operations directed against U.S. citizens. Microsoft announced that they discovered it through U.S. government cooperation and managed to shut down a lot of these information campaigns targeting specifically Americans, right? And I think one of the things is when we're talking about foreign influence propaganda into the United States, this is not a left or right issue, because when you monitor Russian propaganda, right, they will have a message geared depending on the target audience in the U.S. They will specifically make propaganda efforts directed at people, let's say, that are considered themselves from the left, liberal, Black Lives Matter movements, BLM, Antifa, whatever. They will direct messaging for them as they will direct messaging for people who might be considered some small conservative. They don't care in the end which party wins. They just care about if we tear each other apart, and they will gear their
So you haven't
that
actually
way.
looked at the statistics. I mean, you're saying that without looking at who they specifically went against. Like, this is all theoretical bullshit. We're
Let me
about
finish, Particle. Let me just
Let's talk
finish.
about what they
I know
did
you were
and how we're going to fix it, right?
Let me finish because I want to highlight something I think is very important, right? Because again, there has been successful campaigns again, and another things that, for example, the U.S. government has done is seize Iranian-backed groups in Iraq, their web's domains. They managed to shut it down. We've seen this against ISIS. I'm actually very critical, and I'll cover what I do, right? For example, I cover cartels, right? I will be the first one to say that it is what social media campaigns, social media companies do a terrible job. Like, there's this black hole. When you post anything, let's say that's like ISIS related, they'll shut you down. But you're talking about cartels, it's free reign. I mean, Instagram is the worst. I mean, cartels will post things on Instagram all the time. I've had videos of decapitations. I have videos of known cartel members posting with weapons. I can easily find videos of narco planes landing in remote airships, drug loading, drug consumption, them cutting up cocaine easily and just joking around.
I mean, that's a little different than saying Zelensky's named in the Panama Papers, right? I mean,
you guys are literally going to put me to you guys are going to put me to sleep. Want to actually talk about anything that has any sort of impact or import? We're all agreeing that it's corrupt across the board. So as Prodigal, and I'm gonna match Piotr's early statement. I rarely agree with Prodigal, but Prodigal, what the fuck are we gonna do? What the fuck are we gonna do?
Around in time.
Let me actually. I'll go to Patrick and his war against mainstream media. Patrick, what would you answer Fidgetal? What the fuck do we do?
Yeah, thanks for bringing me on. So, I was in the Twitter files, the previous dump, with Matt Taibbi. So I have some direct experience in this area. So I've been verified by Twitter for, I think, since 2018. I got a blue badge, but I was listed as a Russian bot by Hamilton 68, and it's not trivial at all because. Look at who runs Hamilton 68. It's a former FBI agent by the name of Clint Watts. And so he sort of made his name pushing out this term active measures right across the mainstream media. And that was during the 2016 election. So all of this stems out of Russiagate. That's where this was all born. This whole sort of idea, active measures, it like literally lifted off Yuri Bezmenov interviews from the 80s. Okay. I think it's now proven it's highly over-exaggerated. The New York University's Department on Social Media, they did a study, I think it was in January this year, actually, last month, and they said there was no proven effect, that there was, Russian bots or...
Yeah, I pinned it up top.
Yeah, Russian influence. So, I mean, I knew this, everybody else knew this, but what happened is myself, because I have views, because I write articles, I publish, I do commentary, I do reporting. I do live analysis for a number of different international media outlets, including RT at the time. By the way, I did live analysis, volunteer, wasn't paid for RT since 2010, before they were a public enemy number one. They were just another global international news agency. And I was covering Libya. I was weighing in on all these other geopolitical events. So but what happened was 2016, it was quite obvious what happened. Taibbi has also fleshed this out quite well, is that there was a crisis in the Clinton campaign during the 2016 election, and Hillary basically got caught basically meddling, interfering in the primaries. That came out with WikiLeaks. So instead of like facing the music on this plus the email server story, the private email server, they spun this, and this was already shown to be in the Clinton campaign. And I believe even Jake Sullivan, who's currently National Security Advisor, was involved in spinning this project up as well, along with many other people, by the way. But to create this idea that there's Russian interference, and not only that Donald Trump was somehow being aided and abetted by the Russians and the Alpha Bank thing.
He was.
He wasn't. There was no evidence.
You didn't watch the congressional hearings by the social media companies.
There is no evidence.
They specifically said pre-election, any foreign influence activity was equal on both sides. And post-election, it went 90% negative Trump.
So you just acknowledged he was, Prodigal.
No.
You just acknowledged that it was on both sides, but you acknowledged he was.
All right, fine, guys. Go ahead, Patrick. I'm really keen to hear your story, Patrick. Go ahead. You got to unmute bottom left corner, Patrick.
The blacklist. The blacklist began before the election. Okay, right after the election was the first blacklist was called Prop or Not. And this was a sort of anonymous organization. It was clearly a front for either U.S. intelligence or NATO or something like this. And it was basically promoted by the Washington Post, by the Stanford University Knight School of Journalism fellow. And they pushed this out. It was 200 and something websites, all American, pretty much, and Canadian. And people that I know personally, like that are absolutely not connected with the Russians, like Paul Craig Roberts, the former Treasury Secretary of the Reagan administration, and they're all listed as Russian agents, Russian propagandists, okay? And then Melissa Zimdars was the first academic, and this was featured in the LA Times. I know because they put my website on that list, 21st Century Wire, and so she put this out as a guide to other teachers of which websites to avoid fake news, not exposing their students in university.
I've got a question for you, Patrick, if you don't mind. Why did you get censored personally?
I got censored because I published some very successful analysis on, especially criticizing the foreign policy record of Hillary Clinton, specifically to do with Libya. And I wasn't the only one, but I did make quite a good exposure on her role in the Friends of Syria, which was basically a tour throughout North Africa and the Arab League to sort of...
But you got censored for that? I don't understand why.
It's not so much being censored, and I'll tell you, the censorship is much bigger than you guys are even talking about, okay? But what I did is I got put on blacklists, and once the blacklists are created, then the media go to the blacklists, and then the media can then take those blacklists. They can either do two options. One of them is, and I know because I know that the Huffington Post has done this type of activity where they go and they call, if you're speaking publicly, or they'll get in touch with a social media company and say, hey, you've got all these anti-vaxxers. Are you allowing them to post in groups on Facebook or Twitter? We need to do something about that. We're going to run a story about that. CNN openly bragged about this, by the way, kicking off Mothers Against Autism and vaccine injuries. Okay. So, and that's one thing they do. Okay. So the media is involved in this. Plus government use these lists to give kind of an intellectual backing or to some sort of quasi-academic justification or credibility for actioning some of these efforts to sort of get people shut down or get people deplatformed or get them Google so you can look this up as well. This is well researched. In April of 2017, 3 months into Donald Trump's first term, about 200 odd of these same websites that have been, myself included, that had been perennially on these blacklists, Global Research, Paul Craig Roberts.
So does the blacklist, Patrick, does it include a shadow ban?
Mario, it includes 70% drop in Google organic traffic from April of 2017. well documented, hundreds of websites. So at the time, our business ran on advertising. So we had a 70% drop in revenue. Tell me how many businesses could survive that.
But that's so the blacklist is across various social media platforms and mainstream media outlets?
Yeah, well, this was exposed in Josh Hawley's Senate hearings, where he exposed the dashboard which they share between all the Silicon Valley companies.
That's my bastion of source of information, by the way.
It's similar to the files drop from back in November, when they've got that list of people to shadow ban from search results or coming up on certain appearances. It's a similar sort of technique.
But the point is to control the debate on very important topics, especially anything to do with U.S. foreign policy. And if you're doing anything that's exposing any clandestine operations on the ground, and you're really challenging the sort of narrative, and when we're talking about narratives, we're talking about your government is plowing billions of dollars into public relations, hiring the most expensive consultants in Washington, D.C. and London to do up the image of whatever, the moderate rebels, you name it.
Did you just reference Josh Hawley as your source of information?
Yeah, public record, Senate hearings. You got a problem with that?
I think everybody with a brain does. Yes.
Oh, that's very mature of you, because that's in the public.
That's very rich.
That's in the public record. It is very rich. You should go watch the hearing, because everything that he presented was factual. So if you have a political bent and you're just dismissing people because you don't like their politics, that shouldn't be the conversation we're having here. We're talking about forensic information.
Brian, what do you?
I apologize. That was my fault.
So today, Digital's spicy. Patrick, I've got
just anybody but Josh Hawley, just anybody for real.
Quick question, Patrick. Do you mind sending me through the details on? So it seems Piotr and others know about it, but I don't. The censorship or the black book, whatever you called it, across various social media platforms, which included Google, the search results censorship.
It's basically, Mario. It's basically like a list of certain websites, certain affiliations. So if you're working in one organization or one with another, then this can be across states, it can be across various things. I mean, I don't agree with Patrick on much, to be honest, but he's fair to say
what do you agree with and what don't you agree with? I'm curious.
Well, should we say
from what was said just now? I mean,
political.
I mean, I don't agree with Patrick's position on certain things, not related to this specific topic. I'm just saying on this specific issue.
Now, is that you personally or the World Bank saying this?
He's joking.
Yeah. Because clearly, I'm as the
we all know.
I'm the spokesman.
We know that. We know. So Brian, what do you think of what Patrick just said in that? And Patrick, please do send me the information, like that level of censorship across different platforms. But Fidgetal was making an interesting argument, Brian, that in some ways, and Fidgetal, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm going to put words in your mouth, but in some ways, like censorship may be needed, and I think Piotr was making a comparison where it's like we're at a fork in the road where we could be heading towards a similar path to Europe, which is becoming more and more of a nanny state. What's your position, man?
Yeah. So I think that most of us agree in here that there's definitely ethical concerns over whether it was Donald Trump or Angus King or the FBI or the Biden administration trying to convince a social media platform to remove certain content, ban certain people.
So you disagree with them even trying to remove, even their attempt to try? Because I know Jim was pretty vocal.
So I think it's a case by case basis based on what they were actually.
Let's say so it's not illegal. If it's not illegal,
so my point is that I think that it'll be very, very difficult for any case to be brought where they said that any of those, whether it was Trump or King or the FBI, overstepped and crossed the line and maybe infringed on people's First Amendment rights. I don't think that's.
But I have it, Brian. I'm going to ask you can I ask you a tough question? It's a bit of digression, and your audience members,
sure.
This is not too much out there. Believe me, it's not. So as AI gets smarter and smarter, I'm back to AI because I'll tell you why. If we don't limit it. And I'll give you an example. If we go to AI, to an AI, let's see ChatGPT, now we're at 3. Let's say we're at 15. We're that intelligent. You don't want anyone asking ChatGPT, can you please tell me how I could murder 1,000 people? This is something that should be censored because it's illegal. Okay.
Yeah, but isn't that
Then,
more towards the AI and not towards the actual platforms? Like, shouldn't we have better
well, the
controls?
platforms itself are becoming more. All these platforms are going to become
No,
AI platforms,
it's
database
definitely
platforms.
against the AI. We should drag the AI into court. Sorry,
No, we
Mario, I
should make better
apologize.
controls and regulations for the AI, right? The automobile came out, the seatbelt
Stop
mandate came
trying to
decades later.
control stuff,
So
you
easy, guys.
Republicans. It's not going to do anything.
Control
Remember that
easy.
when
So
Skynet gets you.
just Brian, you know the point I'm making. Like, I'm just worried that it's just such a difficult predicament where I see a good argument for censorship in some cases, and I think we all agree on that. There's sometimes, none of us want to see chopped heads
I
in our
don't.
YouTube. You want to see chopped heads on your YouTube stream?
No, hell no. And also
I mean, it
YouTube
depends on
deals
you.
with it themselves, like YouTube and Twitter and Facebook. I wouldn't say they do a perfect job getting rid of these videos, but they do get
But do
rid
you
of them.
remember,
And
Ian?
it's
Do you
not
remember
up to the
that?
government to do it.
Do you remember that video? Do you remember that platform? I can't remember what it was. And Brian, I'll give you the mic again. Sorry to take it away from you. So I'll give it to you right after. But Ian, do you remember that platform that was like, I can't remember what it was called, and all of it was like gory,
Live
shitty
leak.
videos.
Live leak.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So someone told me it went offline a couple of years ago.
Yeah, it's offline, yeah.
Yeah. So would a website like this, should it be offline? Should the government shut down
No,
websites like this?
absolutely not. Absolutely not. It's in the public interest. If a platform wants to host stuff like this on their own and it's not violating any sort of like they're not posting, say, revenge porn, for example, it should be allowed. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think I agree with Ian on that. I think that we're all adults, and if we want to see gruesome stuff, as long as it's legal, I don't really find it an issue. But going back to AI, I think that's a really good point, because I mean, just with Chat GPT and of course Google's Bard's coming probably at the end of this month, you already see people saying, oh, the AI is woke, or the AI is racist, or you have people on both sides saying different things, and they're already trying to censor it, and they're already trying to say, hey, why is this AI taking information that's making it woke, or why is this AI taking this information that's making it seem racist? So I can only imagine, as we move forward in the next, I think, 2 years, I think things are going to progress so rapidly in the next 2 or 3 years that's going to be mind-blowing. I think this is definitely going to be a concern, and I don't know what the answer is for that. I think if you start over censoring things, you're going to have issues where the United States, or wherever these corporations are being run, I think we're going to fall behind, because China would be not censoring it, and then is that AI going to be developing faster, and is that pushing them further?
Isn't it a predicament, Catherine, that we're in a position where should we have power concentrate within humans, where humans decide what to censor, what not to censor, among other things?
Yes.
Oh, within
yes, we don't want AI to control things.
I don't
get on
think
a
the
plane
issue.
that's only run by a machine.
AI should not be allowed to censor anything.
I don't think the issue here with the AI is like, I don't think the solution here is censorship at all. I think what's happening with the AI is being fed only limited information or data points. So that's what's causing the bias in the AI. So, because when I was playing around with it, like, I got it to admit to me, and when I asked it certain questions, that it was only being fed very specific data points. So it's really a technical solution that hopefully, they'll address, because it's really about giving it much larger data sets and figuring out how to, I think we're going to hopefully have a bigger space on this, because it is a complex problem, but
Mario, check your DMs, Mario.
Who decides what information it gets? I think that's the important question.
Exactly, but it's also like the categorization of that information. Because right now, one of the issues that I see with it, for example, the people feeding it the information, right? They're trying to go based on specific resources. Like, I've even ran into this issue when I was teaching kids media literacy. I was teaching high school for a little while, for a quick moment, right? And I was, which publications should you trust? So you tend to give them these resources, which are sort of the mainstream media, right? And everyone has a lot of distrust for these outlets nowadays. And I think this is kind of the same issue that you run into when you feed data sets to the AI. They're feeding them things like the mainstream media, right? And the mainstream media now has
Yeah,
like
yeah,
a
but
lot of
Catherine,
bias.
this has been ongoing, right? You do realize that General McChrystal uh, was allied with an AI DARPA project targeting the right wing for years now, and that played a role in the 2020 election. I think it was called Defeat Disinfo. Like this is already we're at the level you guys are already scared is coming. Like we are there. It's happened already.
Yeah, well, but for example, I'll use a very specific point. Like, for example, diversity, equity, and inclusion, right? So that was the one data set that they said that they only fed it. The AI had admitted that it only fed it pro DEI data sets, right? So if it's only feeding it one point of view, of course the AI is going to give you biased answers. So the solution is really to have, I don't know, I mean, it might be to have a more diverse, ideologically team working at the companies to ensure that there's checks and balances as to what data is being fed, that it's sort of equally proportionate. I think it is a very difficult problem actually to solve. So we're seeing a lot of issues
why would
around that, but
Biden
it's
do
not
that when he
censorship.
just mandated DEI hiring policies for the entire
Portugal,
federal
I
government
just
agencies?
want to do something quickly, Portugal. Jim, always, doing your magic. I want you to introduce Senator Bradley. Sorry, Senator Bradley. Senator
So
Brady.
yes, Eric Brakey, I've known Eric for a while. He was Angus King's opponent, and during the time that Angus King was seeking to get him shut down on Twitter, as we just read in the files, and he's a state senator in Maine now. But Eric, go ahead. Just curious your thoughts about what you read. I know
Tell
you
us,
just had.
yeah, I'm curious. I'm curious about your experience now that it came out, Senator. I appreciate you coming on. What was the experience like? How did you experience that censorship firsthand? Did you know about it? Did you try to do anything about it?
Well, hello. Yes, this is Eric Brakey here. I'm just coming back from serving as the master of ceremonies at a local Lincoln Day dinner, and while I was there, my phone started exploding with all of this. So to answer your question, I've skimmed over the Twitter files and kind of what's said there. This is news to me. I had no idea that this was going on. I guess he tried to have, or his campaign tried to have Twitter ban me and apparently over 300 other accounts on Twitter that were associated with me. Some folks who apparently expressed excitement when Senator Rand Paul came to do a rally with me in Maine. Certainly, we held him to account during that campaign the best we were able to, particularly over his, and I wonder if this had something to do with it. I regularly called Angus King out for his warmongering and fear-mongering and saber-rattling with Russia, and warned that he was pushing us towards a potential nuclear conflict. And I think all these years later, that may have been dismissed as hyperbolic at the time, but here we are. So, yeah, I'm still trying to understand exactly what to make of all this. Obviously, I did not have connections at Twitter like apparently his team did. I never reached out to Twitter and tried to get him banned, but it is it certainly it certainly is somewhat shocking to see, and I'm still trying to process.
Eric, and Eric, let me throw this out to you. So in previous Twitter files, and I don't know how closely you followed them, but for your benefit, I want to talk about this. Adam Schiff was pressing Twitter to stop any criticism of some of his staffers when he was chairing the House Intelligence Committee. Of course, Angus King has been on the Intelligence Committee.
Yes.
So they kind of learned this process. Oh, well, just go talk to Twitter. You can figure out how to shut certain things down. This is, to me at least, and it's coming across like it was purely political. It had zero to do with national security or concerns about Russian influence and all this kind of stuff. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, Angus King has been. You're right to note that he's been on the Intelligence Committee. He's been one of the, biggest warmongers and I would say kind of a neo-McCarthyite in terms of how he has for years been agitating for a more hostile relationship with Russia, despite the obvious danger that poses to the world. And yeah, it's somewhat shocking and alarming. I mean, I will say I wonder somewhat if it has something to do with, and I'm speculating here. I remember he wasn't very happy in 2018 when we caught him on camera at a 9/11 ceremony, basically comparing supposed Russian hacking of the 2016 election, which we all know now was fairly ungrounded in reality. He compared it to the 9/11 attacks and said the Russians were guilty of the same kind of attack on America that Osama bin Laden and the 9/11 hijackers committed on our country. And that became an uncomfortable day for him when we got that video covered on Tucker Carlson. So, I don't know. I'm still processing it all, trying to.
Will you? I want to see, like, have you spoken to anyone? Will you consider taking any sort of action? Any action was recommended by anyone? I'm curious on what the next steps would be for someone that could have been impacted by the censorship we're seeing in the files.
I certainly have no idea. I haven't thought that far. I don't know. I guess I hope Senator Angus King is. It's been now 4-5 years since that campaign, and Angus King is currently weighing whether or not to run for re-election in the upcoming cycle. I think that he should announce that I think this is disgraceful that he would try to censor critics in this way, use his position of power, to do this. I think that he should announce that he is not seeking re-election over this. And perhaps he should even step down, but at very least, and if he does choose to seek re-election, I think the main people need to understand the severity of what has been, what he and his team had attempted to do here. And he should not be allowed to represent us.
Yeah. So Eric, it was 2018 you were running against him, right? Just want to re-verify so everyone knows.
Yes, this was 2018.
Yeah, no, that's exactly when this stuff was going. Although I got to go back and look at it. I mean, it's just rank going after a political opponent. You and I come from this perspective where we certainly have a political opinion, but we're very libertarian minded and Bill of Rights minded when it comes to people's rights. This is not just. I mean, it is obviously a serious problem to someone like you because you were his political opponent at the time on the ballot. But, even more broadly, I mean, like I gave the example earlier, George Bush was able to hide that they didn't know about WMDs and took us into war then. But had someone broken this out on social media, he might have been, because they're the ones who began some of this process, by the way. He could have been stopping that if it had gotten out on social media. Now social media is here. We can put things out. We really need to totally shut down this problem with political opposition because it can go both ways, can't it?
Yeah, the abuse of power, Eric, and we've seen this a lot over the last few drops. I'm not sure if you've been keeping track of the drops in the last few weeks, but if you do decide to do anything, Senator, do let us know. We'd love to keep track. We've been covering the Twitter files since day one. And yeah, if what action you decide to do would be great to let Jim know and he can update us. Maybe we'll have you again.
We'll give you amazing coverage. I promise you that.
Well, I still have a lot to, try to understand about this, what exactly happened. And
Jim is an expert. He can help you out there, Eric. But I appreciate you coming on and would love to have you back.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Eric. Thanks for inviting him, Jim. Also, I'll let you jump in. You've been waiting for a while, man.
No, I just wanted to kind of push back on one of the comments that was made that suggests that somehow decapitation videos are in public interest and should not be censored. I would disagree with that as somebody who tracks this and sees it on a regular basis. And the reason why is the groups that publish these videos, right, generally, right, you can generally fall in two categories, right, ISIS or cartels, and they do it for propaganda purposes, right? And so you can argue the gore aspect is not, but I think there's a risk in the propaganda value that these cartels or terrorists are trying to expose. And I'm sorry, like maybe people have seen it, maybe people haven't. I see these regularly because of what I track. Those are horrific, grotesque. They can cause a lot of mental health issues. I've had times where I had to stop covering it, and I track this regularly because of my mental health, because it's just despicable. But even just from a purely public policy point of view, I think that a lot of these videos should be censored, and I think the government and social media companies should actively censor these groups because they're cartels and terrorists, and we should not give them any space whatsoever in the public domain because of who they are.
But they're already out of the public domain. Most Americans don't know this. I mean, I would argue the flip side. I don't think it needs to be blasted everywhere. But if the average American saw the sheer brutality and animalistic characteristics of these cartel henchmen, they might recognize the threat a little bit more. I'm not saying it should be blasted everywhere, but nobody sees this anyway. Few people know about the cartels and their brutality. I know you report on it, and I respect what you do. But I think more Americans might take the threat seriously if they actually see what these people are capable of, and the paramilitary and special forces members that they're now arming themselves with, in addition to drone tech. Like I see what you're saying, but I don't think it's a problem as is right now. I think the problem is not enough people know how bad it is.
I'm inclined to agree with what Prodigal just said, because the more people know about this, the better. It's in the public, and the public needs to know about it. The more information is given, the better. The more transparency is given, the better. Because, and I can easily make a slippery slope argument. I could say that, hey, if they censor this, what else can't they censor, right? But I'm not going to make that argument. I'm going to say that, simply put, it's in the public interest to know about these things. And yes, they do use it for propaganda purposes, but it can go both ways, right? If people are not afraid of ISIS and they don't recognize the threat that ISIS poses to not just the West, but everywhere else, like a lot of the bombings happen in India, if people don't see these things, these actions happening, then they won't take action against it. And that's a problem.
And Mario,
mass immigration is a big issue in Europe.
Mario, can I weigh in on this public interest question? Listen, there is one, and I agree with Ian and Prodigal 100%. And the reason is because there's a whole range of different things that are in the public interest. I'll give you a perfect example. There's a terrorist group, or a, quote, moderate rebel group called Noor al-Dinzinki that beheaded a 12-year-old Palestinian boy, I believe in East Aleppo. And this is probably around, I think 2016 or something, around when things were really bad there. And it turns out that this group is not only rubbing shoulders with Western NGOs, but some of the people are also affiliated with possibly the same group, acting as drivers for Western media. I'm talking about the likes of BBC and so forth. So, when these groups, these terrorists, are so closely linked, and you'd be very naive to think that there are not very, very close connections, including funding and all sorts of support on the ground in a war like Syria, which is a dirty proxy war, with your own governments, with your own mainstream media. So from that point of view, when you have a video like that, or that footage or photographs, that's evidence. That's forensic evidence in a potential congressional hearing, a parliamentary inquiry, or things like that. When you start expunging information from the public sphere, you're effectively covering it up. And and if you get the state to basically be the hammer for that, this is hugely dangerous. And so I know it's not pleasant to look at, but when you start expunging information from the internet and doing it with a heavy hand, with the state power behind it, this is not good at all, because this opens the door to an unholy amount of abuse.
Yeah, it's worth pointing out that the drivers for that one group were drivers for John McCain, right? He's photographed with the same guys who decapitated the 12-year-old.
Yep, and also Adam Kinzinger and Evan McMullen were also, I believe, on that same, let's say, public relations trip in Syria. And that's a problem, and people need to know about that. The fact that the media will just not cover it and it's completely blackballed is one thing, but we have alternative media, we have independent media, we have a lot of people in this space right now that are quite capable of doing proper forensic analysis of information and putting it out in a responsible way, and they do it every day.
Also, do you want to quickly respond before we go to Shukri and Sleiman?
Yeah, no, I think I think there is, obviously, I think there's a way that the media can cover it, and people like myself or other accounts that cover it, right? And there's, you self-censor, and I think that's the right approach, and you can mention and do it. I do believe that there's, I'll specifically just mention Mexico, that gets barely any media conversation. I think that's a problem. But I just think you can find these videos. It's not hard. You just need to know where to look. And so, it's not like, but I think the people who should find them are the ones who are actively looking or trying to do research in it, and not necessarily the general public. I mean, if you know how to look Telegram, you can find Telegram is where you find everything. 90% of this stuff is shared via Telegram. Telegram has dominated media coverage. I mean, providing media of war zones, 100% is all now on Telegram. And then from Telegram, it gets shared across social media. I just think that we have to be very, 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 very careful of what we're saying. And I think that there is a concern that if we just turn on CNN and we see decapitation videos, or even just Twitter, or people that have a large access of people, we don't know who's looking. We can run into a situation that minors get exposed to this. And I think that is a concern. And I just think
minors should be banned
on that.
from social media. Minors should be banned from social media. If you're under 16, you should be banned from social media. There's a bill going through the Senate right now to do exactly that. And I 100% agree with it. And not a lot of people do, but I do. I think that, however, it is in the public interest. As you mentioned, Telegram. I'm a big Telegram guy, right? And I get a lot of the information about what's happening in Ukraine right now from Telegram. And it shows, horrific actions specifically on both sides, actually, not specifically, but on both sides, right? Where, you have, people who are, they say that the Russians are doing some bad things, and they are. And then you have people saying the Ukrainians are doing bad things, and they are. Like, for instance, Ukraine, very recently has been using chemical weapons on the battlefield, right? And this is not getting any sort of mainstream coverage at all. And if we were to censor these things
without verification, so
get them, info.
Catherine, it's very clear that they're using chemical weapons. They brag about it. These are Ukrainian accounts that are posting it. How is it not very clear when they're literally bragging about it? These are Ukrainian accounts that are posting their attacks on Wagner soldiers.
I want to go. Yeah, exactly.
I don't understand why you need to push back on that. If I were to talk about, say, Russians doing some bad things in Bucha, you'd be like, oh, 100%. But if I say Ukrainians are doing bad things in
because this specific thing is not true, because it's been
not true?
We'll go.
And this is not a statement
we have Ian, this is ridiculous to say it's been debunked when it's literally a video of it, or videos of it, not one video, but several videos of it, of them preparing chemical weapons to attack Russian soldiers.
We have a space. So, Catherine, you want to quickly respond, and then we'll delay for the space we have about Ukraine. I think on Tuesday. Not sure if you want to quickly respond, Catherine.
Yeah. The response that I'll give is that I've seen these videos, and these videos are not accurate. A lot of these videos have been debunked. These videos do not match.
By whom? Who are they debunked? Who's debunked them? Who has debunked them?
Ian, if you watch these videos, as I have
watched these videos. I have watched these videos, and this is the conclusion I've arrived at.
Let you finish off. Yeah. I'll let you finish, Catherine, and Ian, we'll just continue discussion on Tuesday just on this point.
Okay, we can continue. Yeah, all I'm going to say is I watch these videos, and if you watch these videos, they do not stand as evidence, that they do not prove anything. You can go through those. I can't go through everything right now.
The United Nations itself has said that war crimes are being committed by the Ukrainian side. So, I mean,
not chemical weapons. So I don't know about these war crimes. We can discuss that. I don't know about that.
Say tomato, I say tomato.
I say potato, you say potato.
That is what's going on right now.
Tuesday.
So, yeah.
We'll go, Shukri. You've been waiting for
a
while.
The point I'm making, I just want to finish my point. Yeah, the point I'm making is that if it wasn't for these videos being available to the public, whether through Telegram or anywhere else, we wouldn't be having this discussion. We'd be assuming that everything the mainstream media says is happening in Ukraine is true. And we would not be allowed to even have this conversation, about whether it's okay to spend taxpayer dollars supporting a regime that is actively, press ganging people in Odessa to have them fight in the front lines. I mean, these videos are making its way out there. And if it wasn't for these videos surfacing on Telegram, we would have no idea of what's going on. We'd simply believe the narrative that Ukraine is winning, Russia's losing, and that nobody's dying. It's just Russians that are dying, and the Ukrainians are lovingly supporting the war, and that they don't want it to end. They're going to fight to the last man, because that's the narrative they're feeding us right now. When you have Ursula von der Leyen going on television and saying that they're going to fight to the last man, this is what Ukraine wants. It's I'm doubtful of that, because a lot of Ukrainians I talk to in Ukraine are telling me otherwise. Are we going to censor them as well?
We'll go to Shukri. I'll let you jump in. Shukri, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you so much. Great space. A lot of great discussion is taking place. And
Your
thank you
audio
for.
is really bad. Thank you for the compliments. Your audio is really bad though. Shukri, not sure if you
Can
could
you hear
fix
me?
it. Yeah, it's. I'll give you. I'll go to Slayman. Maybe give you maybe a few 30 seconds to kind of fix your mic, unless you could try it
You were
now.
muffled because you had it behind clothing or not directly to your mouth.
Yeah, try now, Shukri. Try again now.
How about now?
Oh, it's much better. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. I want to be able to, there's a lot of discussion taking place, and that's great. And first of all, thank you for letting me come up and contribute to the discussion. But I want to bring it back to the people, the American people, to hear really what the bottom line is. The bottom line is the only legitimate purpose of the United States government is to protect our rights, to make sure no person violates the rights of another. Instead, they censored and infringed on the rights of American citizens, the very rights they were supposed to protect. We need to have a shared understanding that our system as it exists today cannot hold. We cannot be a nation whose rights and liberties are guaranteed by a governing constitution when lawmakers, presidents, bureaucratic agencies, and federal courts have redefined the Constitution into a lawlessness. We cannot be free people with a church full of rights when freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of assembly, freedom of unreasonable search and seizure, the right to self-defense, and due process and other supposedly secure rights are thrown out the window every time the government agents decide to impose their will upon us or declare health emergencies or rig our fucking elections. Lastly, I will conclude with this. We need to wake up. We need to wake up and become people committed to a constitutional republic operating with the consent and the will of properly informed citizens that knows about the essential of good representative politics. Until we do so, we cannot change. So please wake up to that and remember your rights. Thank you.
Thank you for
Thank you.
sharing
I
this,
mean, we can't
Shukri.
turn into Canada. When I say we, I mean everybody, right? I mean, look what's happening in Canada, where they had mass protests early in the year, right? Last year, the Freedom Convoy protests, and what did they do? They implemented wartime powers, right? The ability to shut people down, take away their bank accounts, shut down their businesses. And guess what? Just a few days ago, it was found after a massively long inquest that Trudeau did nothing wrong, and that he could totally do it again. And this is the complete erosion of freedoms, of civil liberties in Canada, which are granted by the Charter of Rights, right? They have a Charter of Rights, just like the Bill of Rights in America, and that's gone. It's completely useless. It's a useless document if you can simply take away people's bank accounts on a whim, right? That's exactly what they did. In Canada, is it a democracy anymore when you have a leader, who can do things like that? You can just literally shut people down. I mean, I urge all of you guys to watch Pierre Poilievre's speech in response to all of this, right? It's very important because that's what's happening in Canada, and it can happen to the United States. It can happen anywhere else. If it can happen to Canada, there's no reason why it can't happen in the U.S., and you don't want that to happen.
Yeah,
But the thing is, the difference. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to quickly say the one big difference between the United States and Canada is we have a constitution, and Canada is a parliament with no, foundational document that guides things.
Take it back.
Great things about the United States.
Yeah, that's not true. They have plenty, actually. They do have a Bill of Rights and a constitution. It's just not being followed by the Trudeau administration, or I should say Trudeau regime at this point.
I mean, I think the difference is that the very unique thing about the American people is that we are the only people in the world who give our government the consent to govern us. It's the people that need to remember that we are giving them the consent, and we cannot be complacent and forgiving at this point. Our founding fathers' revolution less than what we are going through right now. So we need to remember who we are. That's what I meant. Thank you.
I want to go to Slayman briefly. Slayman, is there any way to make an argument for some level of censorship?
I mean, I prefer there not to be censorship, and the reason for that is because as soon as you open the window for censorship, you have a scenario where whoever has authority or power in any given situation uses that power to censor those people they disagree with or dislike. So once you go down that road, the problem becomes you can never close the door. So as an example, whoever's in power, whether it's the left, whether it's the right, whether you give mainstream media the power, as a lot of people do, all of them are wanting to and willing to censor people because they want their propaganda to be heard by all. So as soon as you basically open the window for censorship, you allow that to happen. So that's my thoughts in terms of censorship generally. Specifically, I had a few points. I was going to actually mention similar points to Patrick. So, I mean, it's the first time I've heard him speak, and you just hit the nail on the head on a lot of points, but I'll try and expand on what he said or try and take it in a different direction. First thing is in terms of bots, because I was going to mention it. I did have my hand up for a while, so I'm sorry I'm taking the conversation back slightly. But in terms of bots, like, so what? So what if there's bots? I don't see the issue with it, because you have a scenario where you have one side propagating a certain idea and agenda. You can essentially call them drones or bots anywhere, because there's a proliferation of information from one side where they make you think and believe in a certain and specific way. So if you have bots who are almost giving you an alternative view, that's an alternative view. And then essentially, I don't believe there's a scenario where only one side is probably engaging in this. So that's my first point about that. Second point is about censorship, generally speaking. So, I mean, I wrote a thread recently, isn't it, about the mainstream media censoring any kind of opposition, and they use people to do it. And that's literally the example of what occurs when it comes to censorship, because everybody wants to censor. And everyone's up in arms because the left wanted to censor, isn't it? And so everyone's up in arms about that. But in reality, it doesn't matter who it is; they all want to censor people. And the worst of it is probably the mainstream media, because it's the duty of the press to hold power to account. But if the press is basically part of the part of the censorship and forcing you to think in a certain way, forcing you to believe in a certain way, and actually, if you disagree, you're censored, and then they have different mechanisms to do that. As I gave examples, some of it is pretending that they've been abused and various other ways. So then you have that. So for me, that's the worst thing. So how do you solve that? The only solution to solve that is to not have any censorship, because as soon as you allow it, including the bots, which we were referring to before, you have the problem we've got now.
I want to ask you a quick question, and Ian, and I want to digress a bit because I do want to wrap up the space. It's a pretty small drop. Just got an update, the development. Protocol, I want to get your thoughts on this as well. Usually I don't digress, but I want to keep this brief. But you just got an interview that's going to be airing soon, in which Secretary of State Blinken said that the interview is going to air on NBC News, that the US is very concerned that China is considering providing lethal support to Russia. I know it's been being discussed for a year now, but it kind of died down. But now there's serious concern, and then warned Wang, which is a top Chinese diplomat, that it would, quote, would have serious consequences in our relationship. Now, the reason I'm digressing on this to kind of finish off the space on this important point is that am I wrong to being shitless scared that you have the three superpowers if China does support? You've got the three superpowers involved.
You're not wrong. America is creating an enemy, right? America is creating yet another enemy to distract from all the issues that are happening domestically. You've got an uncontrolled border that they're happily letting, mass illegal immigration into, right? You have that problem. You have the Ohio problem. You have the infrastructure that's completely falling apart. You have priorities that are completely out of whack. I mean, you have Rachel Levine going on television today talking about how the Inflation Reduction Bill is actually about climate change, right? You have all this crap going on and a lot of pushback against it. And guess what? They need a distraction. So guess what? China, Russia. We're going to go to war, China and Russia. Let's mobilize the economy. Let's do World War II again. This is absolutely terrifying. It actually terrifies me that they are going down this path.
Also, so I just to add to that, I mean, I agree with what Ian said. It is a huge problem that this is occurring, but I don't think it's as simple as it being too negative. And what, from an American perspective, from a worldwide perspective, is significantly problematic. But as the thread I wrote today, from, for example, destroying the Nord Stream, America benefited significantly financially, and whereas Europe and specifically Germany suffered significantly. So although, yes, there is in the US, you have seen rises in prices and so on and so forth, but holistically as a nation, up to now, this war has benefited America much more than it has in many other nations.
Also, we've discussed this a lot, and I know I've brought up Piotr for this point. You've just got the three superpowers. If this goes out, if China does supply Russia with weaponry, you've got the three superpowers involved in it.
Mario, they already are. It's just a public statement. The bulk of their drone tech is coming from Turkey and China already. And to be honest with you, the EU and the West can't do much.
Well,
they control.
Mate. There's no evidence to suggest the Chinese are supplying the Russians with drones.
It wouldn't be surprising, but it's just no.
So you haven't read the report on DJI. Piotr, have you read the report about DJI? Are you familiar with Chinese military-civilian fusion strategy?
You know how the Russian-Chinese relationship.
All right, let's go with guys. Let's go with all sorts.
Can I just say something? I just want to say that the Chinese are providing the chips that are used in the Shahed 2 drones that Iran is building, which they're sending to Russia. So
I think
you could already say that.
Actually, if you look at the information, half the data and equipment components that are in the Iranian
Politico is wrong. Don't read the article up top.
They're actually from
guys, just quickly, I also, and by the way, just a warning is involved, is focusing on lethal weaponry, which is like, missiles and probably drones, actual drones, not chips. But also, what do you think about this concern? Like, is there someone that is like, I want someone to tell me the other. It's easy to be concerned when you got the three superpowers involved in a proxy war. I don't know if that's the right term to use, but in an indirect war. Is there another way of looking at it also that wouldn't be as concerning? Because I don't want to be the one that's always like freaking out and saying it's the end of the world whenever something happens.
But Mario, there's no evidence to suggest that they are. That's why
No, I'm not saying they are. No, just a warning. So you
haven't read the Wall Street Journal articles here, Piotr? It's up top.
I'm not going to judge my.
It's been a while, Protocol.
But they literally are. He's saying they're not. And there's been.
I know. But I just want.
He's right. Protocol's right. Read the Wall Street Journal article, guys.
There's been articles published about this for months.
Just want to go a step back. My question is, whether they are or not, that's a different discussion. So, what I'm referring to, Blinken just saying he's very concerned that China is considering providing lethal support. But
I'm aware of the statements. I'm aware.
Okay. I guess I talk about escalation, but I mean, it's still a massive concern that America is concerned about it because they could literally.
But Ian, it's bullshit. You literally had the UK Prime Minister on TV saying we're going to provide long-term missiles, and the jets are coming. I mean, we're doing.
What you're saying is based on everything you say is so based on hearsay.
They want to start World War III, guys. It's quite simple.
Did you?
Look, I want to hear.
I want to go to also. I do want to hear also jump in, man. Otherwise, you're never going to get to speak.
I know, right? This is great. Every time I try to speak Piotr and Particle, you put them in the same space. This just goes to shit. No, I'm kidding. It's great. I just before I go to that, I do want to say, like, hey, I'm all about if you guys want free, no censorship, then bring Elon Jet back. But I'll digress. That's my last point.
He's back, wasn't he? Wasn't he brought back?
No, he wasn't.
I don't know.
No.
So, wasn't it? Well, look,
he's a stalker. He's a goddamn stalker. It's illegal.
But didn't Elon say it was temporary back then?
No. Like the problem with him is that he was supposed to stop posting live data, but he just refused. He refused. He tried to blackmail Elon. He tried to fucking blackmail Elon. So let's not put up with that.
Go ahead.
Literally anybody can find his jet using any system. But regardless, I'm going to answer.
No, that's not true either. The way that he was detecting the jet was very sophisticated. the guy is a programmer. He's a software engineer, and he figured out a way to basically unmask a lot of the data that's hidden by the FAA. And so he was actually comparing it to other jets that are in the air, other private jets, and then making a 100% probability deduction based on all these predictions, and
But
that's
don't
how
you
he was
want to know
able
where
to detect all this stuff.
But
goes, where
Ian, do you agree then
goes?
some censorship,
Go ahead.
some
Go ahead, bro.
yeah, so you would agree then some censorship is justified. I just ended at that. I'm just going to end it at that.
On China,
But
also.
It's
on,
I mean, it's like the censorship that we're discussing is what's illegal and what's legal, right? So, for instance, child pornography. Do we censor it? Hell yes. Do we censor revenge porn? Yes, we do, right? And this is not a matter of censorship. It's a matter of where we weigh what is censorship versus what is in the public interest and what is like what's illegal, whether you're causing harm, right?
Right. I agree. I just think that from my point of view, it's just a little bit my point of view on, hence my comment of just a little bit more than that, especially decapitation. But let me answer the Mario point. Let me just answer the Mario point. So
Mario's freaking out, man. Answer Mario before he doesn't sleep tonight.
Yeah, I know, right? Let me cause another shit show. I'm shocking. I'm going to agree with Particle on this, right? Of course, China's going to support Russia. I mean, this isn't breaking news, right? I mean, if anybody who's tracked the Russian-Chinese relations within the last 10 to 20 years have clearly shown that there has been, although there's a lot of mistrust between both sides. It's not shocking to see that China, because of the effort and the relationship and the amount of
China's economy would crumble with sanctions.
Well, but it depends. It depends. Again, I don't think we're going to go to the level of sanctions that we did on Russia, right? Well, what they'll probably do is they'll find the companies that are providing these weapons, and the U.S. government will sanction those companies. It's coming like a slap on the wrist because, again, the U.S. government has the decision and our allied partners of how much we were willing to sanction. And a lot of this public messaging coming out is to try to at least maybe do the Chinese to kind of self-censor them, like self-impose restriction on themselves and be like, okay, the Americans are tracking us, let's back away. But I think the overall picture, this isn't shocking. This isn't like an escalation. This isn't like now because China.
I never expected it, man. Like, they'd end up doing it, assuming they'd not. But like, how major is it? Is it really
it's more major. They're going to go to Taiwan.
Also, go ahead.
No, so again, we don't really know what it is. The problem that the Russians are having, and this has been widely discussed, right, is that they're running into equipment issues. That they are running into severe equipment issues, and the sanctions are impacting their ability to manufacture, and especially modern weaponry, right? It is having a huge detrimental impact on Russia's ability to sustain this war in long term. And so clearly the Russians are trying to find out with their partners what capability and how they're able to support. And I think if you look at China, right, and China's geopolitical interests and their foreign relations interests, right, is it in China's national interest for Russia to suffer humiliating defeat in Ukraine? Right. And I think from the Chinese perspective is no, they do not want Russia to suffer significant difficulty because they managed to build some sort of a relationship with Russia, specifically if you're looking at Central Asia. Right now, the problem now what we're going into, right, is, there's a lot of discussions in foreign policy, right, that is Russia becoming a junior partner of China. And this has been kind of a long-term trend that we're seeing because China's economic growth, their military influence,
they've been a junior partner for years. Of course they are.
I would agree with that. I would agree with that assertion, right?
Well, Russiagate didn't help, right?
So what I would say is that from
I wonder why the Russians would start teaming up with the
censoring
Chinese,
any Americans that might have opinions
we'll go with all source, then Piotr, and then Protocol, and wrap it up with the host.
Yeah. So to your Mario point, do not be concerned, right? I think this is just. Every country has their own national interests across the world, and especially when you're looking at Russia, Ukraine.
So China you wouldn't be concerned with the U.S. supplying Ukraine, and I'm sure repeat, the U.S. supplying weaponry, NATO supplying significant weaponry to Ukraine, and China supplying weaponry to Russia, and Russia and Ukraine being at a year-long war.
I mean, this isn't like unique in history.
Well,
right?
we've been doing that in Yemen for years. The Russians.
I mean, we've been.
Hasn't happened to that level between U.S. and hold on, U.S. and Russia to that level's never happened to that extent.
I mean, look at Vietnam, Mario. I mean,
there's been more supply significant in that year. In 1 year, there's more weaponry supplied than all of the Vietnam War.
No, but look at this point. Let me put it this point, right? In the Korean War, right, in the 1950s, The U.S. there was an article about this that became declassified after 50 years, I believe, right? And a U.S. pilot got, like, I think, the Silver Star for this. He shot down 4 Soviet MiG-15s during the during the Korean War. And it was completely put under the rug because nobody wanted escalation. It was not intended. It just happened, and everybody put it down in the rug. Both the Russians and the Americans, everybody shut the hell up for 50 years. It was again, this is just to suggest, though, because the Chinese are now getting involved to support that. And we don't know the level of support. It could be just some sort of, the Chinese might be like, hey, let's give some token support to the Russians so we still have influence and support from the Russians, but not enough to, like, trigger sanctions, right? The Chinese can decide. This does not automatically equate into the 3 great powers and then the West or Russia and China going
Actions
into
speak
war.
louder
I
than
don't see
words,
that.
right?
Yeah, so I
They
want to
just
jump in
removed
on
the
this
Made
point
from
because
America
Prodigal, I was
of the
next. You
EV
can go
charging.
after me, Prodigal. You can go
No,
after me, mate.
but all I'm saying is that Biden's actions this week, he removed the Made in America requirement for the infrastructure bill. This is going to benefit China immensely. Like,
what's that got to do with this?
What that has to do is Blinken can say whatever the fuck he wants to, but we're giving billions to China of our taxpayer money.
That has a
that's
very
what I'm saying,
loose
Mr.
association to this. You do bring in some rather far-fetched associations. I must be honest with you. But anyway, look, I just read into this. Am I majorly concerned? Yeah, this is definitely something to take note of, right? I just want to make a couple of quick points and then I'll go over to the shouty man over there. But I think that this is... Number one, we don't know anything other than that the American administration have provided information, which in itself is quite significant. The Americans wouldn't do that if it wasn't something that they feel they needed to share with their allies and partners at the Munich Security Conference, which, as we know, has been historically quite a famous place for Putin to share certain speeches in 2008 or 2007, right? So that in itself is worth taking note of. But we don't know much information about what they mean by we're concerned by Chinese activities vis-a-vis Russia. It could be simply supplying pieces of tech that support the development of another piece of equipment, right? So, for example, in Russia in April, the Russians were unable to begin creating certain types of tanks because the sanctions were preventing them from getting certain components. So are the Chinese indirectly supplying them with some of these things so that they can continue the conflict? That's what we don't know. What I do think is interesting is that they have entered into a deeper partnership in the past year since the war. If you cast your mind back, they said along the lines of we want to, they met 2-3 days before the war started or Russia invaded, and there was a quote no limits friendship, right? But up until this point, much of what China has done is rhetoric only. Diplomacy, not necessarily follow through policy and economic support. And the reason why I've always retained a degree of skepticism or restraint on the sense of how much China will go to support Russia is because of the fallout economically. China has far much more to lose from supporting Russia than it does giving up its economic interests with the West, right? So China receives about 2% of its trade from the Russian Federation. Now, we can talk about if vassalization is happening to Russia, is it becoming a vassal state of China? That's a separate argument. But I am still on the fence as to how much this is a concern. Is it going to...
Go ahead.
No. We've seen as all sources point, we've seen illustrations in the past and even up until last year with the Yemen war, where great powers or big powers supply, other interventionary countries, right? So Yemen is a two-tier proxy war, you can argue, in the sense of Saudi Arabia is fighting on the side of the Yemen government versus the Houthi rebels, which are supported by the Islamic Republic and Iran. And Russia supports Iran, and America and Britain support Saudi Arabia. So, but I think it's a stretch to go, Mario, to your point, that this is going to lead to direct military intervention between
it could even reduce it. I know it sounds kind of counterintuitive, but it could reduce it. Our concern is that Russia being put into a corner will force them to use nuclear weapons.
Well, that's a separate issue. The Chinese would be very firm in not allowing the Russians to
exactly.
do that.
So that's what I mean. Like, if China gets involved, I'm sure there's guarantees by Russia.
I mean, look, there's a difference between kinetic warfare and what we're seeing with these. And this leads me to another point, which I just want to raise because it's related to this, right? And then I'll go to Prodigal. But like when the Russians started floating about those vessels that can carry the nuclear weapons, there's a key point that a lot of people who jumped on the bandwagon go, oh my God, Russia's floating nuclear weapons in the Baltic Sea. No, they're just releasing vessels that are capable of carrying these pieces of equipment. The Russian doctrine when it comes to nuclear engagement has not changed. Limited warfare using a tactical nuclear weapon is a concern.
The doctrine changed a few months ago, though, no?
No, the doctrine has not changed since the US and the Russians established it. What's changed is their way that they're carrying the weapons. That's different. The usability and implementation of the weapons is very different to simply starting to, distribute or release new. It's about posturing, mate. If you've got a submarine that can carry the weapon, that's not great. But if you don't put the weapon on the submarine, then that's basically it's just carrying a big stick, but not using the big stick, right? To quote Theodore Roosevelt or whatever, paraphrase.
Well, let's not
let's
not forget something here. I mean, the real dynamic in whatever China would do is BRIC and the desire to to go away from the U.S. reserve currency, which is China's.
Precisely. They're not going to compromise nuclear warfare.
That's their number one goal, and the only way for China to do that is to have Russia involved, because China doesn't have the oil that Russia has. And oil is a big peg. It's not the only thing, but it's a big part of this whole process of sustaining a reserve currency is, to move it in oil dollars. And again, it's other stuff too, but that's a big part of it. So China's going to do the amount that it needs to do to make sure Russia doesn't get screwed up over their Ukraine thing, and that's their entire motivation. Other than that, they could care less about where Russia goes, if you ask me.
Yeah, just to summarize, I'd just say that, look, this is definitely something to keep your eye on. It's definitely something I'm going to read more into. I'm more online with Prodigal than he probably thinks, but I just was reactive because he's so reactive, and I just thought it would be funny to spice up the stage. But it's definitely something to. I'm joking, but I think it's an important thing to raise, but it's not going to lead to direct military.
It's going to be Taiwan. If it's going to come to a head, it's going to be over Taiwan. We know they've been supplying the Russians. We know that Turkey has been supplying the Russians heavily. This is not an issue. We know India is still doing business with Russia. They're the top importer of Russian oil in the world, and they're the third largest importer of everybody globally. The alliances have fractured. But looking at Biden, he's not going to do a tough line on this. You'll see more blowback from China if more high-level officials from the government visit, and then you might potentially see a blockade. But right now, what has Biden done? He released Huawei's executive when she was held in jail. We've lost the 5G race across the world. He just lifted the Made in America requirement for this national EV charging station he wants to build. 20% of 20% of China's AI industry is funded by U.S. capital. And this is the same government that hasn't banned TikTok, even though India had the foresight to ban it years ago.
Prodigal, I've got this. Back to the question: because you generally, I'll be honest, everything is concerning for you, and you tend to lean more on the concern side of every argument. Is there how would you compare this to other points we've discussed over the last few months on these shows? If China begins to supply Russia, I have a feeling that you wouldn't be that concerned because in your mind it's already happening.
Correct. It might just be more open with it. China's playing a big role in shipping Russian oil to skirt sanctions. I mean, they have bought their own shadow fleet in addition to Russia. Russia has nowhere to go. We have completely broken every rule and international norm when it comes to trade and central banks, etc. There's a reason why you've seen central banks shifted to gold and yuan, etc. Yes, the dollar's still strong, but we have basically caused a lot of nations to look. I'm more concerned long term.
Yeah, if you're going to freeze our cash, just because you trade with Russia, if you're going to freeze.
But why now? Militarily, we could not support both Ukraine and Taiwan. We're just not there.
Yeah, they said this publicly. They said this quite publicly, right? Anthony Blinken said that we won't be able to. That's a reason why pulling out of Afghanistan is a good idea, because that means they can support Ukraine, right? That's a funny thing to admit. Now China knows the game. They know that. Oh, so if we move on Taiwan, America won't be able to do anything. They'll be stretched too thin.
I'll go to Ian since you're speaking. I've just I'm see if I'm actually on tweet it. I just tweeted about it. I want to see what the audience thinks. So I'm just tweeted about this comment that we were just talking about, because I know I kind of pivoted the whole discussion. We will wrap up the space. I want to see if it seems that all source was somewhere in the middle. Piotr was less concerned, and he made a good argument for that.
I'm going to retweet you, by the way. Yeah.
Cool. Thanks, Ian. I'm blushing, man. Thank you so much. So now that you're retweeting me, Ian, what's your position? You seem to be. Are you?
Wait. I have to
kind of.
correct. I have to correct one thing. I've been this concerned for well over a year.
Yeah, of
You
course
guys
you
are
have.
just catching up now. That's not like my concern has decreased.
Can I
I've been
just point
concerned
out
since day
one
one as
thing
well.
on what Prodigal said, which is that the economic point is very legitimate, but again, the role of BRICS is a longer term strategical plan. And not something that's going to play, I think, personally, into the direct calculus of the Chinese. What I am concerned by is the fact that they did release the balloon, and whatever they say that it was an Arctic winds, that, it blew it off course. No, it didn't. It takes a very unique set of winds to accidentally blow it all the way down Canadian airspace into Montana, 3,000 square kilometers or whatever, or so. And so the Chinese were just taking a bog standard, bit of Cold War doctrine, narrative, sort of first deny,
I don't know how true that
then
is.
say again.
I don't know how true that is, Piotr.
We'll
I
go,
say I
Ian.
don't know how true that is.
Ian, I'll let you wrap. So I do want to wrap up the space.
Yeah, I
But
just wanted to
Ian,
let
I mean, I just
know.
final
I just need
thoughts
to do it.
on the.
I'm concerned by the Chinese
Thank you.
actions over that, because they're clearly saying one thing and doing another. And my biggest concern of all is that basically in Chinese policy, unlike in America or Russia even, where you have a hotline where you're able to contact, the respective representative in the other country, China's military can't do that. They have to gain grant from the CCP. So there's a very centralization of control. So when the Americans tried to contact the Chinese about the balloon, the Chinese basically didn't pick up. And so I am concerned that what we're seeing on one side, which is the Chinese trying to say, oh, yeah, we want to work together or be cooperative, they're not doing that through their actions. And the balloon and the lack of engagement is a concern of that. So I do share Prodigal's concern.
Doesn't Milley have a direct line to a Chinese general, though? Didn't he talk about that? About
Not
how,
really.
when Trump was being
If he
belligerent
does,
to China, he was giving them a heads
general
up?
in China would not be able to facilitate a phone call or even receive it unless the CCP was granted it. So everything basically goes through President Xi, to a certain extent, the Standing Committee more broadly. But it shows you how much President Xi has tried to politicize the situation. But and this all comes back to October and his re-election in the CCP conference. So it's a concern. For sure.
Someone mentioned China skirting sanctions. There are no United Nations sanctions. There are only U.S. sanctions. It's not skirting anything. It's not illegal for China to sell Russian oil or do anything they want, trade with Russia. It's a U.S. sanction.
I was going to add that,
not UN sanctions.
Joe, I brought you up. I brought you up, Joe. I brought you up just because I was wrapping up the space, but I looked at your bio. And I just brought you up to get your thoughts on the question I had earlier, the concern I had. I'm trying to be as objective as possible. If China does supply Russia with weaponry, which I thought was impossible when the war started, I'm like, no way. There's no way it's going to happen. And now I'm actually leaning on the other side of that argument. But do you think my concern is valid, or do you think I'm overreacting and I'm missing a different perspective?
Well, I'm just talking as someone who covered the UN headquarters for 25 years for the Boston Globe and the Wall Street Journal and the Sunday Times and a bunch of other papers. There's no embargo of the Security Council on sending arms to Russia. China could do whatever they want legally. Of course, the U.S. won't like it and Europe won't like it, but there's no prohibition against it.
That's legally, but politically, what does it mean for world peace?
Well, I don't know if Russia even
for the war. Let's talk not world peace, for the war itself.
Well, first of all, I don't think Russia necessarily needs weapons from China. They have building a much larger weapons industry since a year ago. They have bought drones from Iran. Again, that's not illegal. I mean, what does it mean for the war? I mean, Russia's already far stronger than Ukraine, and most of the tanks that are being promised to Ukraine, for example, will take months to get there. And what are we talking about, 18 tanks or something? I mean, Russia doesn't necessarily need China's help, and they're already much stronger than Ukraine. So I don't know if that would have any demonstrable effect on the war if China supplied Russia with anything.
I just want to add, Mario, that Russia's war industry, right, its military industry is pumping out ammunition and rockets and missiles at a far higher rate than Europe can even catch up with. This is something that's been in the news in the Wall Street Journal as of like this week, where they pointed out, and multiple outlets pointed out, that Europe cannot keep up. You have the British defense minister going out there and saying that we have lost the war when it comes to production. We cannot outpace the Russians. We are running out of weapons ourselves, and that we cannot afford to send any more missiles or bullets even to Ukraine, because they're using it at a crazy, insane rate in Bakhmut right now and Soledar. So it's like good, like the British have said that, the European countries, their war industry is not geared for this. It's not geared for a war of attrition. Theirs is mostly, quick, fast, dirty combat. It's like basically taking on a bunch of goat herders in Afghanistan. That's what they're built for.
Russia's known for wars of attrition.
Just enough, just in time is how the supply chain was set up.
Just in time war.
Just in time. It's so stupid. Yeah.
Joe, I just wanted to let you know my team is DMing you just to invite you to. So we do a lot of spaces every few weeks on the Ukraine war, so it'll be a pleasure to have you. I can't DM you. If you can DM me first, or follow me, but you could just DM me, and then I'll be able to DM you back. That would be great, Joe. It's a pleasure to have you on stage.
Very good. Thanks.
Tara, Catherine, any final words on the discussion if you're still on your mic? Because I do want to wrap up the space. Any final words?
I'll skip my final words.
Do you mind if I conclude with something? I just want to conclude with this quote from Benjamin Franklin, one of our founding. He says, whomever would overthrow the liberty of a nation must begin by subduing the freeness of speech. So that's very important, and we have crossed that line at this point.
Can you send me that via DM? I'd love to maybe use it in a tweet. It's actually a good quote. It's a very good quote.
Absolutely.
That's what we're talking about.
Thank you.
So Tara, I think, is off her mic. So Rose Alert, I want to go to you briefly and to kind of end the space. I'll give you a shout out, man. Massive respect to what you've built. I can't use your name, I almost did by accident. Can't use your name, but massive respect to what you built, man. Love the news that you're sharing. Love the layout, the design of the news, and appreciate you always sharing the news with us early so we can cover anything worth covering. So
can I just add one quick point?
No, don't ruin the shout out. Yo.
Oh shit! Sorry.
Sorry. It's so good. Oh, good. So yeah, Rosalind, she said, "Give me the shout out."
Amazing.
Man.
Follow him, guys. Raw's amazing.
It really means a lot to me, Mario. You've done a fantastic job with the spaces, and I'm excited for the future. So, very, very excited.
Oh, good to have you here, man. Yeah, Piotr, tell us your final words, man, and then Protocol will obviously respond, and then Ian will jump in.
And off we go again. Yeah. So get ready for
final quick words. Very, very brief. No, bro.
I'm joking,
very quickly, Piotr.
No, I just wanted to say to Joe, nice to meet you. Appreciate your comments. I think that the comment about Iran, I'm not entirely sure. I'm pretty sure that the restrictions on Iran supplies to Russia are breaking some rules somewhere. So I would double check on that one.
Sanctions on Iran, that's correct.
Yeah. I think they are breaching the sanctions at the moment. So, but you're completely correct that the Russians don't. Well, I mean, of course, the UN Security Council sanctions wouldn't exist because the Security Council Russians and Chinese won't allow that to happen. So, anyway, I think it was really good discussion.
By the way, in terms of the Twitter files, I was identified by Matt as being on the Hamilton 68 list. I'm one of the 644. Just to put that out.
Oh wow! Okay, good for you to be up.
You were, They called you.
You never thought you'd have
bot.
to face him, did you?
Oh, you were. Hold on. Joe, you were also part of the Twitter files. And you were suspended.
No, I was never suspended. No, this is the Hamilton 68 dashboard.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Okay, yeah. They marked him as a Russian disinformation bot, which is just a bunch of bullshit, of course, as we know now.
How do we know you're not a bot?
Make that very clear.
Well, just in case, Joe, in case you are a bot, just want to tell you we treat everyone equally here. So,
including
bots,
we're not
welcome. Including bots.
Yeah, we're not bots.
Bot lives matters. The slogan.
Bot lives matter.
That's right, everyone. It's a pleasure to have you. It's been a while. We haven't done a Twitter file drop. We did delay the Ohio space for Monday because Nick is just interview after interview, but he'll be with us on Monday to cover the story in Ohio and what's happened there. And then we've got so massive shout out to Nick and his hustle. This guy.
Oh, Nick is amazing, man. Did you catch him on Fox News? He was talking to Tucker.
He sent it to me. I didn't watch. I think I.
Watch it. It's great. He's great. Like he has a great,
I watched it.
amazing
I watched it. No,
television
no, no,
presence.
no, no. I watched it. I watched it. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's a couple of days ago.
Even I
Yeah,
watched it. I was
I
like,
watched
that's
it.
impressive. I'm not.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
good.
I watched it.
Yeah, he's quite
So
good. Yeah, and he's been
he's
appearing
a
on other shows as well. So catch those
man.
as well.
I remember Nick. I don't know if I told you, Ian. Me and Catherine were laughing. So Nick was talking to me and Catherine about. I don't know. Catherine, when he was on the way to the, but he was talking to me about going there. But before that, he was me and him were going back and forth. He wants to go to Turkey about the earthquake. I'm like, man, the earthquake is done. There's not much more to cover there. And he's like, okay. And then 5 minutes later, he calls me again. Mario, I really think I should go to Turkey. It's 30 minutes of him calling me every maybe 2-3 times in that 30 minutes. And now the same thing for Ohio. I didn't resist much for Ohio because it made more sense and it was only 6 hours away.
Yeah,
I'm
Ohio
like,
makes
let
more
me give
sense.
him this one. So I said yes. And I'm like, I call him today. I'm like, man, I can never argue with you again.
If he wants to go to Turkey next time, send him to Turkey.
Man,
just do
if
it.
he wants to go anywhere now, even there's no news, I'm like, yeah, I'm sure you'll find something. I'm sure
Send
you'll
him
dig
to
out
Ukraine.
something.
Send him to Ukraine. Yeah, have him
Man,
cover
I
the
would
situation
not
there.
send Nick to
No,
Ukraine.
don't do that.
I'm meant to be
This
going
guy
back
has
to
no
Ukraine next
indic.
month. So.
If you send him to Ukraine, make him go through the Russian side. It's a lot safer. I'll just say that.
Okay, there we go. All right, guys. Anyway, pleasure to have you all. Good to have a Twitter file. It's been a while. And we'll see you, I think, on Monday's the next space on the Ohio train derailment in East Palestine. Tuesday, we have the Ukraine-Russia war for another space covering the latest there. I'm really interested for that one.
We need Igor there. We need Kim.com there.
Igor
and some people who are actually informed, not them.
No, they're pretty informed. I would say Igor's really informed.
You
should watch his documentaries.
And we might add to this, Mario, that right at the end of Matt Taibbi's thing tonight, he pointed to some more stuff coming. So there should be some more, even much more.
Did he say what did he say what they're about?
No, but did he? I think he did. He did. Yeah, he did hint at what they're going to be about. It's going to be. Oh God, can you dig it up? I'm not at my phone right now.
That's right. Oh, good. Well, actually, maybe the audience wants to know. Let's just check quickly what it'll be about.
Yeah, it should be like in the second to last post.
Can someone check it out? Did someone check it?
I'm pulling it up right now. Hold on, and I'm going back and forth, and I'm having to answer you.
I want to go through the comments of I'm actually really curious to see what people said.
Start reading the comments. Yeah, we haven't read any of them tonight. Yeah, so let's go over some of them.
Not the space ones. The space ones. I read through them. I did bring up a couple of questions. More opinions today. I'm seeing if anyone else is scared of this. The China thing was just me.
That should be a space. We should make a space. We should get Gordon Chang on there. I think
Listen, Mario, if you're scared, there's a video circulating of a border clash between Indian and Chinese soldiers with a bunch of sticks and bats.
I wouldn't worry about that because they've been told not to use guns. They've been told not to use guns.
Yeah, listen,
both sides.
India and China
both sides don't use guns
all the time. That is like.
Yeah, it's a daily thing.
Hey, by the way,
it's not a serious issue.
When you're ready, I have Matt's thing. I'm going to finish what you're doing.
Yeah, what's the Matt thing, Jim?
Yeah. So what he said in number 15.
This is why
what he said in number
15.
What he said in number 15 was, beginning in March, we'll start using the Twitter files to tell this larger story about how Americans turned their counterterrorism machinery against themselves to disastrous effect through little-known federal agencies like the GEC, the Global Engagement Center, like we were talking about earlier. So that he apparently got some more stuff. Plus, we have the Fauci files that still have to come. I'd like to figure out what they're doing with that.
Yeah, that's gonna be a big one. All source final words. Gotta get into space, bro.
Yeah, I know you have to end it, but just to people, maybe some breaking news. Apparently, Israel did conduct a strike in Damascus.
Oh no!
The significance of this, although it's very recurring, the significance of this is that they might have targeted high-ranking Iranian and Hezbollah officials. There's a lot of unconfirmed reports. I won't share it, but that's something to keep a lookout for tonight.
It is. I'd say it's relatively common. Israel.
No, but not in the sense that he is saying. It's a target. Yeah, they're going after HVTs.
That's quite serious.
So that was like
they're going after HVTs.
I would point out that just 1 second, Prodigal. I would just point out that the Israelis most likely conducted the strikes against the Iranians a couple of weeks ago, and there's been concerns about the Iranians doing the rounds in both Moscow and Damascus now. And also because if you remember that the UN is trying to establish a humanitarian corridor to Syria But there's this the debate is basically Damascus wants to have all the aid provided to them from Assad, and the West don't want to provide it, and so you've got this
and it's close to Iranian
conflict of interest.
installations. It seems Iran related. Iran related. It's
the
close
West
to
wants
Iranian
to do it
Installations are
through
slightly
the
separate,
white
but it's more
helmets.
about the aid provisions, is what I'm saying. There's a problem with the amount of aid getting to Syria's
I mean, it's
side.
a valid concern. A lot of those
It's a very
NGOs and
valid concern.
agencies
Protocol,
are for intelligence.
Protocol, can you tell them to hold off any further aggression just for about 15 hours? We all need to get some sleep, and then they could do all the silly shit they want to do.
Oh.
All right, guys. Pleasure to have you. Also, thanks for trying to get the space to go on for longer with some more breaking news, but it won't work. I'm going to end this space. See you all next time. Thanks a lot, everyone. Bye.
Bye.